Here we go.
Gotcha.
All right.
You're looking very Jesus-y tonight, Josh.
Thanks, man.
Take that however you wish.
You look like a
Hey,
skinny
Joshua means Yahweh. My initials are JC. Gotta live it up.
Yeah, right.
You eat at Burger King of Kings? Have it Yahweh.
Jeez.
Oh, I love it.
You can keep that.
Okay, I think I can do this way. All right. Hello, everyone. We are here. Just bear with us while we share out our stream here to various places. But we're here to really discuss the Ocasio-Cortez endorsement of Pelosi. And it really, Josh, do you want to start by talking about your video and maybe did you discuss that with Graham Elwood also? I apologize, I didn't see the when you were on there, but just what your feelings on that.
Sure. So my feelings are, one, I don't really see much that she would have gained by telling Pelosi to go fuck herself. Though it would have made me slightly happy and a little giddy to see it. Pelosi was being challenged from her right, and so Ocasio-Cortez said, as long as Pelosi remains the most progressive, because let's face it, progressivism is a scale, and while Pelosi may not be progressive, she's definitely closer to progressive than right-wingers. And Pelosi is very, very adept at punching left. She doesn't punch right very well, but she punches left really freaking hard. And I don't see anything she could have gained by saying Nancy Pelosi's a giant shitbird. She can go fuck herself, and I'm gonna die on this hill. I just don't see what she would have gained. And by saying, look, I'm going to endorse her, and I'm going to endorse her because she's the most progressive, it makes Nancy Pelosi like, ooh, oh yeah, look at these young people, ooh, they're falling in line. And so it allows her to get a little under the radar. It allows her to work for, I think she's trying to get a chairmanship or chairwomanship, however you want to put that, like I think an energy where she really wants to push the Green New Deal. And I think that this is very Games of Thrones-like, and she's really pulling the strings of power the way that we'd expect her to. And the main point I'd like people to consider is far too often, whether it be people like Pelosi or Crowley or name whatever corporate Democrat, they'll tell us one thing that we really like, and they'll never have actions to back it up. Well, Ocasio-Cortez has these actions. She's supporting the environmental protesters in Pelosi's office. She's talking about the Green New Deal. She's getting people like Hannity to talk about how scary and what a boogeyman it is to have these social safety nets. And then, so she's doing the actions we want, but then says some questionable things. So she's reversing that paradigm, I think, specifically because these people are all talk. And if you play their game and speak their language, I think that they'll allow you to fly under the radar, and they'll allow you to amass a little bit more power. And I think that she's playing the game. And, on the last episode of Progressive Rampage I did with Chris, I called her Chingona. This is a girl who knows how to come in and kick some ass. And it's quite refreshing to see that she can play their game better than they can as a 29-year-old. And I'm loving it. But that's kind of my take. And Graham also agreed with me in the sense that many progressives seem to be jumping down her throat and freaking out. And he kind of just wants them to chill out a bit, see how the cards fall. Let's continue to watch and see how she manages her actions. But also, don't be afraid to hold her feet to the fire if you really do feel that she is, fucking up.
All right, so I'm going to pause just a second. I want to see if anyone is having any sound issues at all. I've had some problems occasionally with, it's lining up OBS and Zoom and stuff. So like a couple of times I was blasting really loud and everyone else was quiet, and we don't want that. So, so if I guess report it in the chat anywhere, whether you're on YouTube or on Facebook or wherever. And Brian, who takes up all the airtime here talking so much, usually will watch the chat and let us know. But okay, so I wanted to, I think everybody knows everybody pretty much, but so I'll let you, Krish, say hi.
I'm Krish. I'm a comedian, and I tour around and I talk about philosophy and progressive politics in my comedy. I guess I call it socially conscious. Whatever that means to you is probably what it is. So, yeah, that's a little about me. I do a video series every week and a podcast and stuff. It's called Forkful of Noodles.
And I had a great stand-up last night here in Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
That was really good.
It was a super fun show. Yeah. Nice little theater. The Pit. If you're in Chapel Hill, you should go check out The Pit.
Yes, the exciting suburbs here.
Yeah.
But, okay, and everybody knows who Pat is, and if you haven't bought this book, go buy this book, okay? Because it's really damn funny. And I have to say, parrot what John Ellis said yesterday. It was like sometimes during the whole election that he was just so pissed off at something and just in a bad mood and would like see one of your tweets and just start cracking up. And that's how I felt too. It's just so damn funny. The top ramen for college? And
yeah, that's part of the millennial campaign. Top ramen for college. Fight for 12 by 2040-ish. We got to talk that up a little bit. GoFundMe for all.
Yes.
Single prayer.
Prayer.
GoFundMe for all.
Yeah. So, do you want to tell everybody?
I appreciate it.
Oh, sorry. Are you going to Amazon now, or where can people get this book now?
So I'm still self-publishing it, but it'll be on Amazon next week. That's for this. If you're a centrist, buy it on Amazon. Otherwise, buy it from an inconvenient douchebag.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I thought this group would be pretty good, and I think a lot of people have some pretty strong opinions on this subject. Is pretty much the basic argument that's been going on since 2016 of can the Democratic Party be reformed? Can people come in there and change it? Or is each candidate individually just going to be eaten up by the machine when they get in there? And so I guess, a lot of people were not too happy about hearing about Ocasio-Cortez endorsing Pelosi. And so that's kind of going to be the debate here. And if anybody else that's listening wants to jump in, it can get too big and have too many people in here, but as long as everyone's, getting
just
along.
A big progressive orgy.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So if anyone wants to...
Can I ask for more women? That's all I'm saying.
Right, yeah, we need more women.
Progressives, forgive me.
So yes, women on Truth Bomb Activist. If you want to join in, let's see. I'll try to keep a watch on the page here. Yeah, and we'll see if anybody wants. I can send you the Zoom link if you want to jump in and talk too. So just put it down in the chat. All right. Who wants to go next? What are your thoughts on it? We're not really on the exact same page here. Krish and I talked about it.
I think it's not necessarily the worst thing because we know where Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is coming from. We know where she stands, and she's already shown us that she's willing to stand up against a corporate Democrat by basically going and supporting activists, skipping freshman orientation, which every conservative news outlet was like, well, you just lost your seat on some committees, which I don't think she gives a shit about. I don't think she's trying to play the career politician game. I think she's trying to put forward legislation and trying to build movements and organize to actually, push progressive ideologies like a Green New Deal, pushing for, renewables and actually address climate change, which I don't know any corporate Democrat that has come up with any plans for for taking care of climate change. And now it's like there's a countdown clock where we have 11 years till we're pretty much going to explode into flames, you know, and like we're becoming our own meteorite. And basically all Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was saying was, if I support the activists, I will be able to push Nancy Pelosi and show her that she will have the backing of people to push these Green New Deals in place so that she doesn't have to be bullied by the right or other corporate Democrats, because she has legitimate people behind her side, like voters and supporters of what she wants. So I think her endorsing Nancy Pelosi is an attempt to push Nancy Pelosi further left. Whether that'll happen or not, I'm not really entirely sure. That's something that we have to wait and see. So that, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I don't think she's playing the career politician game, and she's been very clear about where she stands on a lot of issues.
Well, the question, Peter Douche, is will that be okay with the donors? Hey, Julian, you're sideways?
I'm not. So I'm not. I don't want to attack her strategy, because I think her strategy of coming in and working within the system somewhat initially and playing the game is not the worst strategy necessarily. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's possible to push Nancy Pelosi left. I mean, she's been there forever. Her whole key to the whole thing is her power, which lies with the donors. As soon as the donors don't support her, she can't win re-election. She has no. Well, granted, now she's probably at the point where she's not going to be reelected. So there's some potential there to where, you know, she finds her soul or something and listens to the party and listens to people, and it's not about being reelected for the first time in her history. So there's some hope there, but I don't know. I'm looking at a weird video feed here. Okay,
this is
that
Julian.
Was a little disjointing. I mean, I haven't done drugs in years, but I did just come from a fundraiser with alcohol involved, so that
so you're
threw me
like
off a little bit.
Okay, Julian, do you want to introduce yourself? But can you flip your video? Do you see that it's sideways?
Yes, I'm trying to check it here.
Oh, okay.
Let me pick that here, sir.
Okay.
That's on purpose. It's a metaphor for what the Democratic Party is right now.
Right, we're going to the left in protest.
Yeah.
It looks like the ship is going down the
way.
There we go. Okay.
There you go.
So do you want to introduce yourself? Julie, you got to tell about the video that maybe a lot of people have seen that you've shot that went viral. But,
Sure, yeah. So my name is Julian. I'm here Broward County, Florida. And basically we've been working a lot with the Teen Carlos campaign. And the video that Kelly's mentioned is basically what happened is during the campaign, we were at the polling location, and we were, at the end of when the polls were closed, we were able to get some video because of the place where we were at. There were actually glass doors, everything was glass all around. And we were able to record the ladies how they were actually pretty much printing all the actual tally and collecting all the ballots. And I guess they weren't aware we were doing that. When they realized we were actually filming them, they tried to block us from actually recording them. So, you know, we pretty much posted that, and it pretty much went viral everywhere. But since we've been actually trying to cover the whole issue with election integrity down here, there's been a lot of issues right now, especially since what happened with Brenda Snipes. And obviously they're trying to make this racial issue, partisan issue, when the focus, of course, is more of election integrity. It should be a non-partisan issue. And pretty much that's where we are right now.
It should be.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, we might get too off on that. We'll probably cover that too. But so I don't know. Anyone else want to jump in on chime in on your thoughts about whether or not someone like Ocasio-Cortez can go in and really change things or not, or is it just going to be more of the same? What, I don't know, Chris, anybody?
I
I think it's going to depend on whether or not she's able to put a coalition together of other like-minded progressives with the same agenda. And what she's going to run into there, obviously, is the Democratic Party machine, which, as we all know, there's a reason why we say that the Democratic Party is where progressives go to die. I mean, it just completely stifles our energy and support, because it's a business. Mm-hmm. I mean, let's be honest about it. It's a damn business. It's dependent on the donors. If the donors aren't there to support them, the support dries up. I mean, it's that simple. And if they feel that Ocasio-Cortez is not conducive to bringing in the donor money, they're not going to back her. It's really that simple. So I don't know how she's going to get around that, or if it's even possible to get around that, to be honest.
Do you think it's like the next step of what Bernie really wanted, though? Because Bernie kind of infiltrated the party from within and proved that you don't need these giant corporate donors to run a campaign or run any. Basically, he can make the Democratic Party as a party for the people. So do you think that Ocasio-Cortez this is sort of this next step of what it is? It's like to get in there and actually force these guys to stand by what they say.
Right. I think it is the next logical step, but how effective it's going to be is the real question.
Personally, I don't really think it's going to be as effective as we'd all like it to be, because it is one of the first steps in a very long game that we're playing here. And I think that, and I think Josh could help me out with the name of the philosopher. He's always hip on those. But I remember what the philosophy is, and it's that you kind of swing left and right, but it's always moving towards the future. And we always end up in the center ahead of ourselves, right? So we get extremists over here and extremists over there. Well, that can be looked at on like a micro level, right? So we really wanted a Bernie Sanders in a position of the highest power to be able to make the greatest change. We didn't get that. We now have an Ocasio-Cortez who's made it in, and she's doing the same kind of stuff that all of us wanted, a little bit further to the left of where he was, but she's getting pulled back into the Democrats. It's kind of like she's the Dem-Enter prototype, right? She's the test model. Let's see what this can do, but she's definitely not the end of it. There's going to be a big pile of them coming in another year and another 2 years from that. That's where I see it going.
But I really hope they don't go, you know, she'll lose her support with progressives if she goes to center. I mean, we all understand that. And
oh, yeah.
As a case study, it's not so much what she accomplished, because we all agree that the system is so fucked she can't accomplish too much as a lone wolf progressive and a true progressive. But if she starts parroting the talking points from the middle, we're all fucked, because then that means the system eats these people alive.
Do you think she'd be able to
worried about?
I guess what I'm shooting for here is that maybe she could be part of that bridge to gap between the centrist language and the left language, because in order to get more people that are thinking in terms of where the resistance is, for example, you need them to come back over. It's kind of like you can't convince a Republican to vote Democrat by telling him he's an idiot. So you can't really pull the center back left by telling them they're a bunch of fucking morons. But I mean, you can't, I don't know. I really hate compromise, so this is very difficult to spit out.
No, I'm with you on that.
But yeah, at the same time, I'm an adult and I understand. So, well, kind of an adult, but
to Chris's point, I think what Ocasio-Cortez is doing is pretty smart. One, let's go back to what I mentioned when she was in Pelosi's office and supporting the environmental activists. So what did she say? She's like, look, if Nancy Pelosi is going to be backing progressive agenda, we need to let her know she's got our support. So what she's going to do is she's going to collect some like-minded progressive people to come to at least vocally support Nancy Pelosi if Nancy Pelosi starts hopefully shitting on stuff like PayGo and actually starts pushing a progressive agenda. So what it's going to do is it's going to show everyone around Nancy Pelosi that there really is support for these progressive ideas. And I think some of the purpose of this is like, I'm sure many of you have had arguments on social media where there comes a point where you realize you're not going to convince your interlocutor. It just ain't going to happen. So your audience is actually everyone who's watching. So her audience isn't Nancy Pelosi. Her audience is everyone who's watching Nancy Pelosi, because Nancy Pelosi is kind of this bug light that everyone's queuing in on. And what did she say? She says, Nancy Pelosi started off with a background of progressivism, and she's not wrong. She's fucking far cry from there now. But it paints a box around Nancy Pelosi, and it forces her to step outside that box to say, "Who the fuck told you I was progressive? Where the fuck are you guys getting this shit from?" Right? And so it'll be really interesting to see if she can get Nancy Pelosi to raise her hand, and hopefully, and this is likely a pipe dream, but hopefully in the era of Milo Yiannopoulos, who really danced this line of, well, I'm not really a neo-Nazi, but then the videos came out of him doing Nazi sleuths while singing, to a bunch of Nazis. So hopefully it'll force her to say, hey, I'm not really progressive, in a way where all these progressives are really tuning in, and to Pat's point, that she won't get reelected, hopefully. And so it'll create an outrage, a real policy outrage bubble, hopefully, and not just a superficial, I don't like the way that you talk to me outrage. And so it's really interesting, and I find that the best way to get rid of these people is to get them to out themselves. And I think this is where some of her genius lies, and I may very well have a blind spot because I really like AOC. I really want to see her succeed. But this is where I really see her power, is that she's going to get Nancy Pelosi to raise her hand and wave it and say, I never once told you motherfuckers that I was progressive. I don't know where you guys got that. And then have that just be the end of kind of this centrist Titanic.
I have to say that self-implosion concept is probably the most logical, most positive way of looking at all of this.
So, Julian, did you want to jump in here?
Well, I was just pretty much listening to the opinions. But I guess my opinion on that, Alexandria Cortez. We know that she came out, or she was praising, I guess, John McCain, right? And there was some disagreement with that. Mm-hmm. Nancy Pelosi, we know for sure that she works closely with David Wasserman Schultz. Every time she comes down here, a Secret Service, she actually sends Secret Service on us multiple times, just because trying to get her, get us away from getting her video, exposing what she's doing, and it's just wrong. I don't think that endorsing Nancy Pelosi really is helpful for progressives in any way. But she probably should use base silence at least if it's not convenient for her. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm. There was a great article in The Intercept, and now I haven't been able to find it again, but basically it said that when Ocasio-Cortez was elected, that the only way that this would work is if there is that coalition in Congress, if there are enough progressives that then say, okay, here's the line, really kind of like the Tea Party did on the right, and say, we're not compromising. This is what we want. And that was really the only way it was ever going to work, is if there were many of them, because otherwise you're this lone person, fighting this big system. It's just, I'm personally not very optimistic about, I'm more in sharing Julian's point of view. And I just think it's over and over and over again, we see the same thing again, where a candidate, whether it's Gillum, there's a huge list. They sound progressive, and then as soon as they're just eaten by the machine. And I don't know how it ever changes if we don't say, no, this is not okay. Like this, we draw the line here.
Well, I don't think she's alone. Like that's sort of the other part of it is, I think there are other candidates that share what AOC is doing. So I don't think she's particularly alone in any of this. It's just they have not been as vocal or as loud as AOC, but that's because AOC got the most amount of coverage out of all of those candidates. And when you look at the midterms, every progressive network and every liberal news media was championing all these people that got in that were part of a minority group, whether it was part of the LGBT group or the first black representative or the first openly gay representative. So I don't think she's alone in all of this. I think what she's trying to do by saying that, hey, I'm taking the first step to endorse this candidate so that I can essentially hold her feet to the fire. That's where I look at it, and maybe these other representatives will pipe in and say, yeah, you know what, we do want something where the corporate Democrats are going to come out and say that we're going to put something into legislation for renewable energies and job retraining for people that used to be part of the coal industry, and I think there's going to be some fervor that's going to show up in the next couple months. Who knows? But I think that's something that we can look forward to.
Not to mention there's 150 or so sycophants that are going to be voting, or that voted Pelosi, right? Who wouldn't change their mind anyway, who should have been voted out of office. But I kind of get Kelly's point where everyone keeps calling for a political revolution. Well, revolution in real terms is with weapons, and it's our way or the highway, or we'll blow you away. But if we're going to do it in a peaceful way, we have to actually stand up for our conviction and maybe not try to play the 3D chess behind the back door. Let's convince this side to play that side for our own advantage. Maybe everybody standing up and holding a line and saying we're not putting up with it anymore is the way it's going to flip. And this isn't it.
So I look at AOC as like, if she recognizes her power, we're going to know that soon. And if she utilizes her power and becomes a Bernie, you have another Bernie in there, and you have another one that can bring another Bernie in, and you have more people that can be examples to people who got elected by our regular donations. They're not owned by the donors, and when they see they can stand up and say the right thing, even if they lose on the legislation and they don't get their issues necessarily passed, that's more people that truly represent us, that are going to be making, they're going to make a difference. And that's all going to help Bernie in 2020 too, even if they lose every issue. I mean, these people, they're so beholden to donors that once you get into Congress, these people, they literally go into call centers and have binders set up about who to beg for money. And that's half their fucking day. Okay. And so those people hate that part of their lives. They need an example of someone that can get reelected and that can still have popular support in the public without doing that. Yeah. So to me, I'm with you. Like, at the end of the day, just toe the party line. Don't compromise on shit too much. I mean, you compromise on things, you're killing the progressive movement, and I hope she doesn't do that.
Yeah, it all depends on what she does.
One really interesting. I was going to say one interesting fact is that there were 4 people in the House who refused to accept corporate PAC money. That's now increased by an order of magnitude. And so these are really interesting things to keep in mind. Also, AOC is a Justice Democrat. Who else is a Justice Democrat? Ro Khanna. Ro Khanna is coming out and just like, boom, how you like me now, bitch? Right? And so he's coming on strong with Bernie. And so I'd really like to see her join forces with Ro Khanna, and as mentioned before, with the Tea Party movement, be the tail that wags the dog, and show people, because I think the power with a lot of Justice Democrats is that they speak a nonpartisan language. I can't remember who I read it from, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was the douche man himself, but it was something along the lines of bipartisanship typically it means that the Republicans have a shitty idea that the Democrats want to go along with. And so nonpartisan ideas, things like Medicare for All or a Green New Deal or, revamping our roads, some sort of new Eisenhower infrastructure bill, whatever it is. These are things that help non-voters as well as voters for life. These are things that help Green Party voters, Libertarian voters, Democrats, Republicans, whatever. And so nonpartisanship is really the future. And I think if you see people speaking a nonpartisan language and then sliding into a bipartisan language and talking about how proud they are of bipartisanship, that's when we need to worry. Now, even though I'm totally speaking up AOC, I'm definitely a realist, and I could easily be a pessimist, easily be super down. I choose to be positive. It's hard. It's not very easy, but I see things moving in the right direction with a $12 we're as mentioned before, we're creating our own meteor to kill us all in 12 years. We may not have the time at the speed that we're going, but we'll see. Since we increase by an order of magnitude, if we can increase by even a quarter of that, as far as people not accepting corporate PAC money, and then extend that further, because just because you don't accept corporate PAC money doesn't mean you can't hold a gala that you charge $2,500 a plate for, right? So then you're still accepting corporate PAC money while not really, because it's a wink wink kind of thing.
Well, that's the tricky thing.
There's a lot of things that can be done. I'm really interested to see how it plays.
I think that's the tricky thing there. If anybody knows more, please fill in here the blanks. But I know there was something with Kamala Harris where it was like she was saying she wasn't taking PAC money, but there's always some other way that they managed to do this and hide it.
Yeah, well, it was her and what's his face, Mr. Pharmaceutical Companies.
Cory Booker.
Cory Booker.
Yeah. And it turned out that both of them were getting, I think, maybe less than 15% of their money anyway from those PACs, and they didn't take money from the PACs, but they ended up taking it from the individuals who would have gone ahead and given the money to the PAC in the first place. You know what I mean? They just circumvent the terminology.
Right.
Democratic rising star, Cory Booker. We can read about it.
True story. Yeah, there it is.
No, but can I bring up something positive? I mean, I hate to be positive because that's not a progressive thing, but along the same lines. So, I don't know where any of this is going to end up, but in California, for example, the progressives actually took over California Democratic Party. I mean, we have the numbers. We're actually over 50% of the Democratic Party now for the first time ever. And everybody knows, well, Californians know California Democrats, actually asterisk again, California progressives that are paying attention. So we're down to like 2% of California that knows this stuff. But Eric Bauman used to be a pharmaceutical lobbyist, and he became the DNC chair. And in the fight for that, we progressives had 50% of the California. We're in control of the DNC over 50%. But there's a super deal sort of process, just like the national elections. So they ended up electing Eric Bauman, who was this shitty guy that actually lobbied against lowering drug prices. So he was outed last week. So for the first time, we have a chance to actually elect Kimberly Ellis, who was the progressive that Berners wanted. And in May, that's a huge election. And people really need to get in there because this is California, which, if we're supposed to be this liberal bastion, we have for the first time the chance to elect an actual progressive to the DNC chair. And that's a huge thing. But, this, 4 years ago, this is out of bounds, something that wouldn't have happened. So there's some positive stuff happening.
Yeah, I think you hit on something, though, that part of the split, I think, in the progressive movement is whether you're still really behind Bernie or not, even. I mean, I haven't listened to much of anything that he said for a year at least. Now, I mean, ultimately, if he were on the ballot, would I vote for him? Do I think he would probably do better than most? Yeah, but I mean, I'm extremely disappointed that he just decided to, support Hillary and toe the line and Russia, and all this stuff. So, I mean, that's where I sit, and so I think that's part of the split in our camp, I guess you'd call it, is those that are still supportive of Bernie and those that are like, no, he just, turned his back on all of us. So anyway.
Yeah, it's always one of those questions, like what happened? Like why did you go and support the person that essentially fucked you out of being the Democratic candidate, which is what everybody wanted in the first place, and causing, basically a spiral of cause and effects that got Trump elected. And that's always been the question. But I'm also my thought is I think we should let Bernie relax for a little bit because he's just old. But I think what he did is energize an entire new base of people that believe in the same politics he does, but are a lot younger and can push and go a lot farther, like AOC. Like I think there's a lot more of her out there that just kind of need a little bit more encouragement and a little bit more spark to run for office and to push for progressive politics on whatever level they want to look at. So I think there has been some positivity that came out of Bernie's campaign and out of the disappointment in Bernie. You know, I think the people that are disappointed in Bernie are kind of took it upon themselves to be like, no, maybe I can be the better Bernie. And I think that's awesome. I think that's, you know, and I'm always the eternal optimist when it comes to this sort of stuff. But I think that, yeah, you can be disappointed in Bernie. And I was too.
Who can be the better Bernie? Who's got any sort of numbers to actually win an election at this point? I mean, that's my only question. Like, so, you know, we can talk about who you prefer better than Bernie, but none of them can actually freaking win.
Well, let me offer this odd suggestion. I have a shitty suggestion here. It's taken into the world of fiction. Star Wars, right? Star Wars. I know Mr. Ramirez likes Star Wars there. If Bernie is old Bern Kenobi, so obviously he's our martyr, right? If he had gotten in, that's fantastic. I think if he runs in 2020, he has 8 more years inside of him, and I'd love to see what he can do. But should that not happen, if he is the martyr that he could potentially end up being, which is perfectly fine as well, because it's not death. I mean, all of this stuff is art, right? So he didn't really die. But the idea never dies, and in death, he becomes more powerful than you could ever imagine, right? We're really looking for Luke, aren't we? Aren't we looking for Skywalker? And Skywalker had his flaws.
Bring up Beto, I'm done.
No. That oily bastard has love for me. Okay.
Thank you.
No, I haven't seen that person yet. I mean, Ocasio could be it. It is 2018, the year of the woman. I mean, she might as well be the next or the last Jedi, right? But all I'm saying is that even if he doesn't run in 2020, or even if he does and he still loses, I'm not losing any hope on this. He's done the biggest move I think he's going to do, which is wake all of us up.
Right.
I mean, who among us were really this deep in it before that guy walked on the stage?
Right.
Yeah,
did all you guys see speaking of Star Wars, did everyone see that thing on YouTube? It was Bernie Sand Wars. Surely you guys saw that, right?
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah? No?
Yeah.
You haven't seen that?
Sand Wars? I'll have to watch this.
Sand Wars.
It was Sand Wars, and it had like Debbie Wasserman Schultz. It was very well done.
Yeah, that was a heck of a series.
I don't think so.
Oh,
I have not.
Okay, look it up.
I'll have to.
Yeah. But I don't know. I just, we've talked to so many candidates and that signed the candidates with the contract, and whenever they were running as Democrat, it was the same story over and over and over again. They were completely ignored. They couldn't possibly get a debate with the establishment candidate. And if they did become enough of a threat, then they get smeared in the media. And Tim Canova is the biggest example of what happens when you really become a threat. I think we don't know everything yet from this past election, but for sure, I mean, and I've shown graphs before on our other live stream of what happened in 2016, and it looks pretty damning for being actually rigged. I mean, you can just look at these graphs and see how things came in at the end, and it's like in this perfectly mathematical pattern where it starts taking votes away from him and giving to her. Yeah. So I'm going to get into that more on another live stream, I hope, to see if I can get this statistician to maybe talk and explain it a little bit better. I actually heard him on the phone when I was down in Florida with volunteering with Audit USA, and I understood some of it. But anyway, I'm bad at math. But anyway, so I guess what I'm saying is it seems like they're never going to relent. If the popular opinion happens to line up with what the donors want, then sure. But I just don't see at this point, they haven't done any, this autopsy on the Democratic Party, like of what went wrong and how can they fix it. It seems like they're just still looking for the gimmick. They're still looking for that candidate that can grab a bunch of votes.
It's how can they overcome what went wrong? Like, they know what went wrong, but how can they convince us that wasn't why they really lost?
Right. And see, I have to kind of, push back on what you said about, and it ultimately led to Trump winning, because I think the reality is, 12% of, like you put in the book, Pat, 12%, that was a great thing about the party Pumas also. I'll have to find this part. but where 12% of people that supported Bernie voted for Trump, and I don't think that
it was. Well, I think it was was it 25%? I forget the math.
Yeah. Okay, here it is. I think
of Hillary supporters.
This is really funny.
Much bigger number. I mean, obviously.
Oh yeah. Okay, so 12% of Bernie supporters voted for Trump, thereby costing Hillary the election. Which I think just that statement. I know you're kind of being facetious, right, in saying that. I mean,
course, yeah.
Yeah, because this idea that people were supporting Bernie because he was not the Democratic establishment person. Those 12% probably never would have in a million years voted for Hillary anyway.
Or voted at all, for that matter.
Right,
they were just trying to crack a whip on the woman they knew they hated.
Yeah, okay. And then, so, granted, 25% of diehard Hillary supporters known as Pumas, Party Unity My Ass, voted for John McCain instead of Obama. This is why I don't like math. It just feels wrong. I thought that was very funny, Pat. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's this idea that those votes were just belong to Hillary anyway somehow, or belong to the Democrats, is just ridiculous. I think it shows what people really wanted, which was not that.
But that's also to say that basically what the party was saying at that point is that Bernie wasn't really a Democrat, even though, that's the party that he was running within. That's the party that he was representing at the time. And by making statements like this, by getting mad at Bernie supporters that voted for Trump because they were that betrayed, instead of looking at your own party and saying, what did we do wrong and how did we fail our voters and our supporters, they're basically like, no, this guy's not a Democrat anymore, and which is funny because they're not fucking Democrats, right? The Democrats themselves are basically Republicans, and vice versa, because it's essentially just one party that votes for corporate interests anyway. So it's putting the wool over people's eyes by making statements like that all the time. So yeah, but I think again, AOC.
Well, and
yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead, Josh.
I'm going to say, remember that one thing that Michael Moore points out is that more people showed up in Michigan for the primary than they did the general election. And this is what I mean about getting people to raise their hands and say, I'm a fucking shitbird. And so I think this is what happened. We had Bernie run. People were like, holy shit, Bernie's somebody worth voting for. I actually wanted to go out and vote. They got super excited. They made sure that they stood in line for hours. Here in Utah, I stood in line for almost 4 hours. And, we voted. And then we saw the shitstorm of the exit polling being off historically. Never seen it off as high as it was. And it really disillusioned people. So it suggests that people really, to Chris's point, people really wouldn't have voted. And so there are many people who not only wouldn't have voted in the first place, but then after the election, you see Bernie holding a Medicare for All town hall in West Virginia and getting a place at 75% Trump voters standing up and applauding for socialized medicine. And, coming to the philosophy point, a philosopher that I really like, his name is Slavoj Žižek. He talks about, so he's a communist, and he talks about how he really likes, he likes that Trump is in office, though he's very anti-Trump. And the reason why is because Trump galvanizes the left. And I've got a 6-year-old pounding at my door, so I'm going to go check on that.
I wondered what that was.
But the logical argument there really is that nobody really wants to talk about it, and it's that Trump is in office now because as a result of what happened with David Wasserman Schultz and the DNC and the rigging of the primaries, right? There's something that they never want to address. Even today, there's still this argument. I mean, had it not been because Hillary Clinton decided to give Trump so much free, airtime, airways, which is, it's a fact, right? Trump would not be in office. We'll have Bernie Sanders right now. So here come all these people saying the same thing all over again. Okay, it's because you guys voted for Trump, or it's because of Jill's time. It's none of that. It's because if the whole process had been followed through the way it was supposed to, right now Bernie would have been the president. we don't have that issue. So right now, again, we have the same issue. Similar things were mentioned with Andrew Gillum. And to me, that was a kind of preview of what we're going to see in 2020. And then also, as far as Bernie Sanders, how the whole issue with all the elections were happening in Arizona, Maricopa County, and all those things. There were so many instances of actually election fraud, not voter fraud, how they always want to focus on that, but just actual election fraud. And this is what happened with Tim Canova down here. Nobody wants to address that. If we're really going to spend so much time, campaigning for candidates and, all this thing and that, we need to make sure that at least, our vote counts. And the issue of election fraud, election reform, election integrity is not really being talked about enough, as it should be, in order for us to really guarantee that our votes are gonna count.
Speaking of voting counting and Jill Stein, did everyone hear about the big win that she had recently? I think I'm going to get the state wrong. I'm sure somebody could look it up. Didn't she get paper ballots are now going to be in
Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania, that's right. Yeah.
Yep.
Huge.
Somebody's doing something about it, and more people need to be following in their footsteps with that. Yep. I mean, you can do it in your own state.
It's a big win.
But Julian, you're absolutely right. I mean, we've talked about this. That's the end of the line. All this other stuff doesn't matter if you get to the voting booth and we don't know if it counts or not. And I am going to talk about this until I'm blue in the face and tell everyone that will listen. Please go and look up that DHS is partnering with these voting machine manufacturers. They're having closed-door meetings, classified briefings, and how is that okay? I don't understand this. There was this, it's called the SCC charter that was formed in February, and the person on the board of that is the VP of ES&S, the voting machine manufacturer. So that's not transparent. I mean, and so what good does all this other stuff do if that's what's going to happen? And we know, we'll see, Tim filed to contest the election, asked for a re-vote just, 2 nights ago? And so the biggest, I guess, piece of information, help me out here, Julian, but is that there are is it 90,000 votes? Or almost 100,000 votes that are for Debbie Wasserman Schultz. But if you look in the data, it doesn't say where they came from. They're not listed as coming from any particular precinct. It's just blank, and so all this stuff kept getting removed. Do you know more about that from a IT point?
I'm not too really sure about that really.
Okay.
I know that the team recently, they filed, the lawsuit against Brenda Snipes, and I mean everybody's talking about it right now. So that's a big win for team, and also that Rick Scott just obviously. Pretty much fire Brenda Snipes right now. So this is going to be a battle. It's going to be kind of long term, but it also I think it helps to keep the focus on electoral reform and the need for election integrity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's just not enough. You're right. There's not enough talk about that. Yeah, I don't know. I guess this is public. But the complaint, yeah, I think it was almost 100,000 votes, as I recall. And Lulu Freistadt did a really great article. It's in Truth Out about what happened there and how there are all much higher number of undervotes and just how it's very not something you would normally see. So to be continued, I guess, figure out what actually happened. But something's definitely not right. I think the 5% is obviously bullshit. But anyway, one sec.
5%, that's crazy.
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
Considering what he got last time and all the nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
It's
yeah.
bullshit.
And I mean, it's good that he's fighting it. But I mean, every candidate isn't going to do this, and I just see what we're up against. It's very scary. I mean, I got one candidate in Louisiana sent me a message with, I think he posted it on Facebook. Ryan Trundle, someone that was trying to vote for him, took a video, and we saw this in 2016. I don't know which machine it is, but they're sitting there poking the button to vote for him, and it wouldn't accept it. So I mean, they put everything into these runs for office, and then what? You're just waiting. We don't even know if the machines are doing this properly. You can't trust it. It's just a black box.
And people have been making videos exposing that problem with these different machines, not just these current ones, but even the ones in previous technology where you hit a button and it lights the other one up. And you have to tap it like 11 times or something for it to actually pick the Republican or the Democrat. I mean, it's swinging both directions as well. I don't know. I read about something that I guess it went through in 2016. I'm not entirely sure on this, but there's an organization trying to fight against something that passed in California that changed the laws around how people bring in absentee ballots. And it used to be that somebody that was related to you had to bring in the ballot, or like have some kind of proof that this is a thing from somebody you know. And that in this past election, there were like at the end of the day in very strong Republican arenas, and sorry to mention this with progressives, but anyway, the Democrat ended up winning in an immediate flip. And so now the folks who think that shouldn't have happened are starting to argue that there was this giant vote fraud at that point, where they're just bringing in false ballots or ballots that were filled out by like senior citizens that were getting help on how to fill the ballot out correctly, and then brought in at the last minute to flip the vote and skewing the exit poll data there. So, I don't know, anybody else heard about that shit?
Yeah, I've heard about that.
I was at the Green Party meeting today, and there was actually somebody who had brought that up, and they noticed it in, I think, Fullerton, in the city of Fullerton here. So it's not unheard of. It's really ridiculous that something like that would happen. I mean, you can't just have somebody show up at the last minute with a whole bag of ballots. I mean, it's just nuts.
Well, I personally saw in Broward County, we were at a precinct, and as they were closing and leaving, this woman was transporting ballots alone in her car. And she said to me, and John Brakey, I know I'm not supposed to do this, but we're shorthanded.
Ooh. Jesus, so it's like the Democrats create false ballots and the Republicans keep everybody else from being able to vote and gerrymander all their districts. Am I getting this right? That's how it works?
Yeah, right.
Yep. Yeah. How do you stop that? It's like both ends. I'm not going to use a dirty epithet here, but we all know what I'm thinking.
But all I could think was, wow, okay, I think it's $20 million that Florida got. So the Help America Vote Act, this $380 million, where I just picture the voting machine manufacturers sitting there, with their waiting for their handout, because it sure as hell isn't going to hire enough people to transport the ballots. They're supposed to have somebody from each party to be together to transport them. And then other stuff happened. There were other videos from Broward County where they showed the cars pulling up, and multiple cars had only one person, and then they were putting those ballots into a truck. So who knows what? I mean, we can't assume. We don't have any evidence that those were fake, or we don't know that. But what we do know is that that chain of custody is broken.
Once the chain of custody in a situation like that is broken, then the whole thing has to be contested, because it's void at that point. If you can't trust the chain of custody, then then the whole election has to be called into question. I mean, that's insane. It
should be, and I'm glad that Tim is fighting this. But unfortunately, I asked some people in the election integrity community, like, how often, what are the odds of getting a revote? I mean, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I think we need to go back.
I think the odds of getting a revote will be shown through North Carolina. And did you hear about that? There
I'm
were
in North Carolina now,
apparently GOP operatives that would go to like senior citizens' houses or places of residence, and they'd say, "Hey, we're here with to help with getting your provisional ballot to your ballot location. Go ahead and give it to us, and we'll get it there." And then they just threw it in the garbage. And so the Republican there won by 900 votes. And so there's a huge shitstorm about it. And so it'll be interesting now. How do we get past this? I think through Tim, with his fight through Stacey Abrams with her fight, and with Greg Palast, who's exposing all this and exposing that the real demonic wizard behind the curtain here is Kobach, right, with interstate crosscheck and with all that garbage. And so the more that we can get them to raise their hands, whether they be Democrats or Republicans, to show how terrible they are and to show how anti-democratic they are, the better chance we have to actually move past it, because only they can undermine themselves. We really have no power to throw rocks at this giant wall. And so I'm really hoping that with the rampant voter fraud of 2016 on the Democratic side, and then the rampant voter fraud constantly and consistently with interstate crosscheck, as shown by Greg Palast reporting, and with people like Brian Kemp, who ran his own election, and just what's in question there in Georgia, and with what's going on in North Carolina, and then what's going on in Broward County, consistently in Broward County. And so, again, I think these people are outing themselves, and hopefully, I'm not being naive here, that these lawsuits are going to be are going to help us move fast.
Indeed, well put, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think, what these lawsuits are essentially going to do is put something new in place. Is sort of the long con of the whole thing. Is we need a new system of voting that doesn't involve machines that are controlled by corporations, essentially. And I think we're kind of heading in that direction, which is hopeful. Yeah, yeah. I brought that up to my wife, and she is not a fan of trying to put that stuff on the phone. I mean, yeah, if we can figure out a way to keep that stuff secure, then I'm all for it. I'm all for using technology to make it a lot easier. And realistically, people in my generation, I'm 30 and part of the whole millennial crowd or whatever. But people like their technology, and I think if you want younger people to get out to vote, yeah, getting it right in their hands would be a lot easier. But that's a lot more security protocols and stuff involved. Yeah. And at this point, I'm ready to just say fuck it and let's go to Scantrons. Let's do that system. Let's go back to high school and try that shit again. Because what else is gonna work?
Yeah, well, I mean, no matter what they try to produce, if anything should replace the current system, you're going to have to first trust the people that are replacing the system, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what we all really want is transparency, and that's the thing that's missing from all of this, right? You can't count the ballots without transparency. You can't build a machine without the transparency. I can't trust a politician without some kind of transparency clause that, like Ramirez and Lane are having people sign, right? So where are we at? Who in the world could you gather together who we're all going to trust, like some A-team that's going to come out and, like, I don't know, there's a group that Our Voice USA just joined called Progressive Coders. Maybe something out of that could be produced, right? Like-minded individuals. But again, how are you going to get the conservatives to go along with it, right? Because they'll say, oh, they're progressive, and they associate that with liberal and Democrat.
That is the tricky part, because any reform put in place right now, we are all so skeptical, as we should be, that it's only going to make it worse. Like, whichever party is promoting the new change is more likely to be instituting fraud in their new change.
It's Machiavellian times a million. Yeah.
You know what? But it's interesting because
so,
right now,
actually,
yeah, it's interesting also because right now there was just recently a protest organized by Republicans against Brenda Snipes. And a lot of people didn't want to go because they were saying, well, there's a whole bunch of racists who are organizing this event and this and that. So I went there, and what I saw was actually people who were not really being violent. They were not being racist. They were actually black males and women there. There were most of the people there, a lot of them were people in their late 60s or so. And they were very open to dialogue. So I just started talking to them. I told them, the whole issue with the election integrity, and they understood, we're progressives, and they actually wanted to join with us. They were expecting us to show up, but they said that, their event was sabotaged because they were saying it was just like a white supremacist kind of event, and it wasn't really that. But what I did say is that they're actually willing to focus on a nonpartisan issue and have an event where they actually call out for election integrity. So I was really surprised about that.
If you have leaders promoting that, there would be national support for it. I mean, people would support it everywhere. Just like in Florida, I mean, you actually passed convicted felons can now, felons can vote, right? Isn't that Florida that where released felons? I mean, but that had bipartisan support. Because you took the argument to the people, and voting is the same, but neither party will ever take fair voting to the people. They'll never put that on the ballot.
And that's their paranoia, right? They're so sure the other side is going to cheat, and while they're trying not to.
That's kind of like my concern. Is the more we kind of talk about it on both sides, it's one side is going to start pinning the other side, and there's going to be certain groups of people that. Like, I talk to certain people, and they have no idea that the Democratic Party it cheats elections just as much as the Republicans do. Like, it's mind-boggling to them. They can't wrap their heads around it. But that's because the Democrats sit there and say, oh, look at this gerrymandered district. Look at interstate cross-check. Look at all these things the Republicans do. And we're the good guys. And realistically, that's not the case. But when you kind of reveal that both sides are a bunch of shitbags that are stealing the election, it does kind of disappoint people and doesn't get them excited to vote. But what I think is the exciting thing is we have candidates that are in place that are essentially saying, let's reform the system, right? Let's have some accountability. On the left, let's have some accountability on the right, and if they are going to meddle with the elections, then we, the people, will hold them accountable. And I think that, like we're saying earlier, if there is some leadership behind it, if there's a bigger voice kind of that has some public sway, can get behind it, then you don't have to be this hopeless about the fact that both parties are rigging the elections. You can basically look at both parties and be like, hey, now you have to pay for the crimes that you committed. And hold their feet to the fire. And I think that's sort of the direction that I see things going. And it is a long game. It does take a long time to get to that point, to rally a bunch of people together, because there are people that look at the leaks that came out of the DNC, and they look at it and then start screaming Russia, 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 instead of being like, no, the DNC is trying to use Bernie Sanders' religion against him. Why is that okay? That's not what the Democratic Party stands for. So, I think people are slowly waking up, and it's a little bit of a patience game. Hopefully,
but that piece of it, I think, the patience on that, I think we're never going to get there, because I think the average population doesn't pay attention to any of this shit. Like, they just don't. I mean, like.
And why is their attention span so short?
Yeah. But it's been like that forever. I mean, if you look at just incumbents versus progressives, and you can look at a city that all supports progressives, but it's name recognition because nobody's paying attention. It's name recognition. That's why in 2020, a lot more progressives will win, strictly from being the second time people have heard their names.
Yeah, not even necessarily because of the platform.
Right. I mean, that's the sad part.
They're kind of sad.
I mean, I'm trying to be optimistic, but the optimistic part is they'll have heard their names again in 2020.
Yeah, well, you got to saturate the market, right?
Yeah.
And nobody cares about print media and television anymore that's under the age of 40, I think. So the more YouTube people that pop up, the more podcasts out there that are talking this the more it's
absolutely. Yeah, no, millennials don't watch TV. I mean, you do the math on it all, and their message is fading quickly. Interest message. I mean, just is. Socialism is way more popular than ever. Medicare for all is more popular than ever. Distrust in the media is more popular than ever. Or we can credit Trump for that at some level.
I think there's even a political party that's in development with the name Avocado in there.
Is there?
Yeah. It's like they came out of Australia, and it's
that's
progressive movement. Yeah, right. I think it's like the Crazy Avocado Toast Initiative or something. I don't know.
Well, at this point, I think, you know... Oh, go ahead, Josh.
I was going to say, you know, Chris mentioned, and, you know, Pat also mentioned about short attention spans. I think this is why Bernie really pushes for people to run for school board. You know, we have short attention spans because, you know, I'm 38, you know, so technically I'm not even a millennial. I'm a Oregon Trail generation. I'll take that, fuckers. And
what does
so,
that say about me? Fuck you.
Yeah, really.
You're in your 40s, I think.
Wait, I think I'm the oldest.
Yeah,
I think I'm the oldest.
So he tells people to run for school board, and the reason why is because, you know, since I've been paying attention, I want to say about 10 or so, public education, you know, has been gutted, and probably long before I started paying attention. And every time we, quote unquote, balance the budget, we're always gutting public education. And anytime there's anything like humanities or civics, or anything that kind of expands your cognitive awareness, that expands your how to think. Oh fuck, we gotta get rid of this. We're gonna go ahead and replace it with a what to think. So if you're not told your marching orders, and you're told to live kind of in this gray, here's this undefined gray zone that you got to work your way through. Well, of course we're gonna have a short attention span because we've been dealt black and white scenarios for at least the 13 years of kindergarten to 12th grade. And I think he really wants people to run for school board to help tackle that, because trajectories are important. You know, you can have two near parallel lines, you know, from their origin point, but if they're 1 degree off, but by the time you get 100 years down, they're radically changed and completely different. And so this is the importance of a long game, but also the importance of getting to people when they're young. And, you know, to put this into a little bit of perspective, and while this doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot, it's more funny. Now, I've got my 6-year-old now. When he was 3, my claim to fame, I got that kid to say, in perfect diction, Parasaurolophus. By 4, he could say Micropachycephalosaurus and Archaeornithomimus. By 5, he could visually point out about 40 different dinosaurs. And by 6, this is my favorite part, at the end of a dinosaur encyclopedia I was reading to him, there's what's called caprolites, and it's fossilized dino poop. And so he's looking at me, and like some of this looks like nuggets, and some of it looks like I just took a shit in a shoebox. Like it's this giant turd. And he's looking at it, looks at me, looks at it, looks at me. He's like, "Why do they find that appropriate? These dinosaurs just pooping all over the place." And you know, and harness these questions, harness these silly ideas, and get kids to ask questions and find out where their motivations are, and just push them all in. And this all started by this kid saying T-Rex, and I said, God damn, how vanilla is a T-Rex? Let's go ahead and expand this a bit. And I think that this is how we win, is that hopefully we can save ourselves with a Green New Deal, and we can have a habitable planet. But it's really by teaching our kids and teaching our neighbors' kids, and helping single people who have no kids understand the benefit of a public education system, and understanding the benefit of paying taxes to have a viable public education system, so they're not all surrounded by a bunch of kids that are just ripe for authoritarianism, because the only thing they do is they just swallow their talking points rather than stop and deconstruct and say, well, are you sure? Let's look back in my notes on the Socratic method. And yeah, so again, I think this is why Bernie really harps on school boards, and this is why they're so important.
As a parent who did try to do what you're doing, and I think I succeeded somewhat. So in other words, you're saying your kid is doomed to suffer because they'll be awake and the rest of the kids won't, and they'll stand out like a sore thumb because I'm just kidding.
That did kind of happen to me a little bit.
I mean,
good job, Josh.
That's what
I know, right? I'm such an asshole. I want him to relive the trauma that I did. Like every day in high school, I got screamed at. Like I wanted to live my value statements, and my value statements at the time were, you know, I live in Utah. I was never raised Mormon, and I decided, you know what? I'm a fucking metalhead, and I'm gonna be as metal as I can. I'm gonna wear this Slayer shirt with an inverted cross on the back, in this, you know, 99% Mormon, you know, town, Bountiful, Utah, and you know, fuck you. Oh, you don't like it? Fuck you. And so I was really in people's faces when they got in my face, because You kind of have to be.
Did you have magic underwear underneath at least?
I've always, yeah. Well, and I've always challenged the narrative, and so I want him to as well. And yeah, sure, it didn't make my life happier, but I'm a far stronger person, and I'm now gravitating towards things that I think can help more than just my immediate circle of influence. Which ultimately, if there's ever a definition for a superhero, I would say it's people who benefit those outside of their immediate circle of influence, and hopefully, I can have him wear a proverbial cape, so to speak, and some badass tights.
I really was just joking you because I know where you're coming from, and I try to do the same thing, but it's not always easy when you're the one kid that stands out because your parents are activists or whatever. Yeah. Okay. I just had to. Sorry, I was making us a drink, but I heard from the other room, and I just want to chime in about the whole the election integrity. Everything. There are two battles going on. Okay, there's still the battle, the red versus blue battle, and then even within the election integrity community, and I'm not going to sit here and call out names, although. If John Brakey happens to be watching, I doubt it, but he knows because I challenged him every day on this. There is also the battle within, on the, whatever, the left, the liberal, the progressive side, which is the grassroots candidate against the establishment candidate. And so when you've got this, at the end of the day, if you've got this any blue will do, and I'd like to use your hashtag there, Pat, the any blue will do, the DOO with the little poop. If at the end of the day that's where you sit, then I don't see how we're going to have change, because a candidate like Tim Canova or Sander Hicks, or name any of the other ones that we talked to that were phenomenal, and that they're all saying the same damn things too on the issues. They're all over and over and over again. We heard the same things, and this can't just be a coincidence. I mean, obviously they have the finger on the pulse of what their community wants, what they're hearing, and they were getting a lot of support even with total media blackout. But if the battle, if that battle continues and there's no ground gained there, I don't see, to me, having a blue establishment candidate win is not a better option. That's where I sit. And a lot of people don't agree with that. They still think, okay, we'll go into Beto, my favorite topic. I mean...
Well, I was just going to say, that's why the important fight is really for the media. It's really important that you do what you do and everyone keeps doing what they do and informing people about how shitty some of these shitty people are.
Right. With our 10 viewers on, let's see, one page. Actually, the candidates with a contract page, let's see if we're getting any. Now this was, before the election. We did get upwards of, we would get like 1,000. Uh-oh, what just happened? Hang on. Whoops. Sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
But we would get like maybe 1,000 views. I don't know if they watched the whole thing, but people would tune in to hear a candidate, and I think that's promising. But yeah, I mean,
but you have to add that up what you do to what 10,000 other people do. We're up against the brainwashing from bullshit MSNBC.
Yes, yes.
We've had a lot of practice and a lot of money to research and figure out exactly how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget. So we're working from a big handicap.
Just right here in this group here, and I think I can guess, but who is at the end? Okay, just take the Texas race. We had Sima Hernandez, who did really, really well against Beto. Unfortunately, didn't win. And then we had Ted Cruz beat Beto. Who here thinks it would have been better to have Beto win? Because I don't. I'll just be flat out honest.
I think it would have been better to have Sema win.
Well, yes, of course.
Well, yes,
absolutely.
Sure. I think the only thing that Beto really showed is that you can take a red state like Texas and push it towards blue. Like, he didn't encourage a bunch of people to come out and vote. That's the best thing he's done, but he's still a center, middle of the road fucking vanilla Democrat. And that's...
But he slid to the right at the end, like they all do. They all take corporate money at the end
there, though.
fuck things up. Like Gilliam, he could have won too, and at the end, he just fucked it up.
First, I noticed his language changed and nobody cared, and then I noticed his money came from a crappy source and nobody gave a damn.
Yeah.
Now the guy's in office sometimes, and we're all fucked.
Well, I mean, I was watching some of the clips of his speech because everybody, you know, he got on Stephen Colbert and Ted Cruz was terrified of this dude and he was trying to slander him for being in a punk rock band and all this other shit. So I was like, all right, I'll pay attention to what's going on. But all the speeches that he was doing was like at these ritzy fucking galas, and I was like, how are you somebody that does... I want... If you're a true candidate that represents the people, then you go to the shitty dive bar where you can get nickel shots. That's where you do your... That's where you sit down and talk to people.
Absolutely.
You don't do it at a gala where people are paying hundreds of dollars a plate.
Ocasio is poor as fuck, and people love her for it. Now,
we're getting comments. No,
compare that to Beto, and Beto, people don't know this, but Beto's wife's dad is a billionaire. Like, how many of us are married to someone who's a billionaire, whose dad's a billionaire? I mean,
all of us.
I'm not going to say he's a bad guy because of it, but I don't know anyone married to a billionaire. Like, that's not us.
Right.
Like, I don't know one person that knows one person married to a billionaire. I'm like, 20
of all the people I know, combine all their money, it's not
billionaires.
I know one guy that breaks 6 digits.
It would
every
take
year.
$1 billion of...
Is that including the decimal point at the
That's the
end?
closest thing I got.
But here's the thing too, is that just because you're married to a billionaire's daughter, while that may not necessarily mean that you're a bad person, I guarantee it means that you're not going to say certain things. I guarantee with that guy looks at you crosswise when you say Medicare for all, you're going to start saying access to healthcare. I do want to challenge. I do want to complicate a little bit of the idea of any blue will do. And while I am very much against any blue will do, this is where things get really complicated in the real world. Is that, you know, here in Utah we had Mia Love, and some of you know my story with Mia Love. I'll recap this real quick. Showed up to a Mia Love rally, had an American flag. Within 1 minute, they send the cop out. My words, get the fuck off that property if you're gonna have an American flag. Legit, within 1 minute of me being there, they think you're a protester. Get off. And so I had to take it again, and I got in, spoke to Mia Love. I was in there for about an hour. Well, Spencer Cox, who's our lieutenant governor, starts the event off saying, "Hey guys, we're all here to support Mia Love, and she's here to save babies." Well, I spent 4 years in the Army. I was a combat medic. I served in a combat support hospital. We actually took care of kids in Kosovo. We actually went to small towns and hamlets and gave free medical care to little kids. In Iraq, we actually had little kids, victims of war, come to our hospital. So that fucking majorly triggered me. And so I've actually basically cared for babies, right? And then here we are in the administration that's locking up babies in cages. And my wife is fucking Salvadoran. My wife has, undocumented family here in the U.S. And so full on triggered, when he said that, I did yell out, "So let's do it with contraceptives!" And I got a few snickers. And eventually, I just got really, the more I thought about it, the more pissed I got. And once he was done talking, he started playing some videos. I just started screaming out, save babies from cages, reunite families, abolish ICE. Well, they kicked me out, which was their right, to say, "Dude, you're fucking obnoxious. Even though you have a ticket, no longer is that ticket valid. Go ahead and leave." And that's their right. What's not their right is they invoked Schrodinger's laws, and then they cited me with criminal trespassing. So now I have I showed up to court, and they said, the prosecutor said he didn't even look at the evidence. He wanted me to plea in abeyance for disorderly conduct. I said no. I requested a jury trial because, again, I think that we exposed this through the court system, and we exposed the lack of democracy through the court system. So I requested a jury trial. My pre-jury trial is January 2nd. My jury trial is set for January 22nd, assuming they don't drop charges. So this is Mia Love. Ben McAdams, on the other hand.
So I'm a Utah Democratic Party delegate. So I'm a state delegate. Well, in March we had our state convention. So Ben McAdams is the guy who won, who beat Mia Love, and he's very much a blue Republican, and he's addressing the healthcare caucus, and he's saying, I think people should have access to affordable healthcare. I think people should be able to have healthcare, and just like, I mean, totally fucking dog whistling for, hey, you see that sinking ship Obamacare? I want to keep it afloat. And so I yelled out, you know, so what are you for, single payer or Medicare for all? And he ignored it. And so I'm really good about waiting for a pause in somebody's speech or, you know, in their rhetoric, and then I'll occupy that empty space. So again, he paused, and I yelled out again, so what are you for, single payer or Medicare for all? And so he looks at me really annoyed and says, I think we've already had this conversation, which we hadn't. So this is his way of saying I'm for neither. And so again, you expose this, and even though he won, you expose this by getting him to raise his hand and say, I am not a progressive. And that said, Mia Love is somebody who had about 1,000 days between real town halls. What she would do is she'd reach out about a day before or the day of and get about 6 people to show up to a sanitized town hall during business hours. And usually they'd be business leaders that would you know, give money to her campaign and give the appearance of a town hall and say, hey, you know, I had a town hall. Ben McAdams, on the other hand, will actually stand there for hours on end and allow people sometimes to yell in his face. And there's something honorable about that. There's nothing honorable about being a corporate shill, but there's something honorable about standing there and at least letting your constituency yell at you. And so he's very much an any blue will do kind of guy, but he's got honorable characteristics. Now, does that mean that I'm going to say, hey, a Democrat won in Utah, all right, now we're red violet, you know, so we're on the right path, and let's go ahead and let him do what he needs to do? Fuck no. And so, you know, I'm going to hold his feet to the fire, and I'm still going to heckle that bastard. But you know, there's a huge glaring difference between heckling and getting cited for criminal trespassing when I have a ticket to entry, and heckling and have the guy still shake my hand afterwards, right? And so, we need to be careful when we say that any blue will do means that it's going to be a complete shit turd, because it may still be along that same trajectory, that same scale. But at the same time, if we wipe our hands and say, all right, job well done, this any blue will do, DOO got in, you know, then we're good. We can all go home. Well, that's not how shit works, man. That's not how democracy works. You know, we got to be constantly engaged, and we got to be that constant. We got to be there and make sure that they're aware of how displeased or pleased we are.
Well, and I think that's the thing that doesn't necessarily translate from the polarity of Twitter, is that most people are going to vote for Democrats that aren't too shitty. You know, like, they just are, if you're a Democrat. No, but, I mean, we get caught up in a little world. I mean, I'm the Twitter guy, maybe, more than you guys, but
I don't know, I'm kind of a Twitter
I just wanted to pass that along. But I'm not against voting for the lesser evil. Just don't be too fucking much evil, you know? And that's what we've been faced with for a long time.
But, you know, but also we have, you know, the issue that, I guess that the term progressive is being co-opted, you know? Like, we saw that from Andrew Gillum. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is calling herself a progressive, right? So there's no really clear definition of what a progressive is, or, you know, what are the standards of, you know, to define a progressive.
The word is dead if Debbie has taken it. It's done.
Corporate are more progressive than Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
And the problem is, how do we go about, like, you know, distinguishing between them? I mean, researching who's funding them and all of that. But I guess I want to get back to I'm going to use it as an example, the whole Beto and Ted Cruz. So who here thinks it would have been better for Beto to win? Anybody?
I'm voting for Beto.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
if I could, I would have.
Okay.
I think.
I'd go Beto.
Yeah, I think Ted Cruz is dangerous on a lot of different levels. I think he's a guy that can put theocracy to law, but I don't think that's what the states really want. I don't think that's what America should be about. It's not a theocracy at all. But you know, but to Josh's point too is, I don't think, I think the point is like, if Beto would have won, I don't think the Democratic Party should have been like, oh, well, we won Texas, hooray, the job is done. No, the job just started, right? And I think that's where a lot of people on the Democratic side kind of lose sight of things, is when they kind of see these upsets, when they kind of see these things where they go, oh my God, a traditionally red state, a traditionally conservative state voted for something liberal or what have you. They kind of just go, well, that's it, we won, we did it, we nailed it, and then now nobody's holding that candidate's feet to the fire, you know.
I have to say to that. Right. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
Here's my problem. I understand the whole Beto being better than Cruz thing, but here's my issue. Isn't that mentality what got us to Trump in the first goddamn place?
Yep.
Isn't that what got us here? We kept allowing these, well, he's better than candidate to get ahead and support them. I'm sorry, if we're going to actually change things, we've got to stick by our guns and say no more of this bullshit.
But what author?
If you're just slightly better, you're still not good enough.
And people like Brian, what author am I going to mention now?
I'm guessing the guy who wrote "Listen, Liberal."
Yes, Thomas Frank. Over and over and over again. One of these days, I'm going to convince him to come on here.
There's a list that you can go down.
But, people like Beto are lullabies. They want to put you back to sleep. Yeah, because Cruz was overexposed in 2016, I think he's a little more impotent than he used to be, especially since he's either the son of the Zodiac Killer or just a wacko in and of himself. Mm-hmm. And so, honestly, I don't think the people of Texas are going to let him get away with too much in the first place. And meanwhile, it shows a guy like Beto, not good enough.
You know, but is he the new Kamala Harris? Like, are they putting everything behind him now? That's what I'm kind of curious, because he showed he can grab some millennials.
Yes. You know, okay, so I have to tell this.
I never believed him. The second I heard him talk once, I'm like, he's full of shit. Yeah. And then the more you look into it, he fast-tracked TPP. He gave Wall Street deregulation. He voted for that. Mm-hmm. He gets the oil money. He's just bullshit. Yeah. He's not the worst. But that doesn't mean you should be president.
But he almost is, because we can look at Ted Cruz and go, yeah, what was the thing with the bacon around the end of the gun, Brian? Some ad. We know that he's bad. Where he would,
he was so cooking, he can eat
it? Cooking bacon by wrapping around the end of the gun.
He wrapped around an air block and he cooked on the gun, and it's like.
Okay, but so we know that's bad. What worries me, what scares me, is all the people that are just lulled to sleep by someone like Beto, and they don't know what the fuck's really going on. Okay, so, and I have to, sorry for the people who've already heard this several times, but so my daughter Abby posted a thing on Facebook a while ago, and it was a Vice News piece about Beto and how cool he was because he used to play guitar. And I gave her a bunch of shit about it, and I said, take that down. Because here's the thing. All I could think of was Arsenio Hall and Bill Clinton on there playing the sax, okay? And go listen to Moderate Rebels with Max Blumenthal and Ben Norton talking about Vice News, pushing this, the agenda that they have wrapped up in this hipster guise to suck people into that. And Beto's no different. He's going to vote for war. He's going to vote against Medicare for all. And so it's worse. To me, I think it's worse because Ted Cruz, we know what we're getting, and I don't think that people really want that. If he won because not enough people were inspired to come out and vote for Beto because Beto sucks. Just say no to Beto, and I'm really mad at Willie Nelson.
Okay, so I'm probably more in the pro-Bernie camp still than a lot of you folks, which is great. That's fine. But the one person that could sabotage that, the establishment wants to get behind, is Beto for that purpose because he has the millennial support. Like they're putting everything behind him now.
Do you think he'll be a VP candidate to someone like Kamala Harris or Joe Biden? Do you think that's the direction that they'll push him?
for sure if they get through the primaries. But it's to take Bernie down now is the purpose. I mean, that's because they're throwing everything at selling that Bernie is not popular now. I mean, we can have arguments about Bernie being the right guy or necessarily, but you can't dispute his popularity. That's just bullshit when they spin those polls. So the only thing they have is to latch on to a youngster like him to promote that millennials like this guy.
Okay, so I want to challenge a guy named Mike Ferguson. We have some mutual friends. I'm happy to send you a Zoom link if you want to join in. He said, "Wow, so much ignorance here." So by all means,
bring it in. Put him online.
Come on in.
Come on in, buddy.
Yeah.
Come on in.
Well, I could just post the link here. Who's up for that? I'll do it.
Yeah. Pop in.
I'll do it.
I think I've had this argument with a lot of people that are centrist Democrats a bunch, and this is sort of what Beto reminds me of is like when I tell people that hey, Obama deported more immigrants than fucking Bush did, and don't forget ICE kind of showed up under his watch, and they're just like, oh, but look at him, look how nice of a speaker he is, and I'm like, that's a nice front, that's great, he is a great speaker, I'm not denying you that, but he also did some really fucked up shit that we shouldn't be putting him up on a pedestal for. So whenever I hear stuff like, oh, Beto used to play in a punk rock band, yeah, well, he's not fucking punk rock anymore. He's not.
Yeah, right.
Just because he rolls up his sleeves doesn't mean he's punk rock. It's just nice.
I used to fucking break dance.
Right.
Do I look like a guy that's gonna fucking break dance anymore? I'm sorry, that's irrelevant.
No, it's a ridiculous argument, and that's sort of the mentality that we're facing from the Democratic side. And I have not in the last probably 4 or 5 years. I still don't know how to break through with that because it usually ends up with people just yelling and screaming at me, or I'll yell and scream at them. And I had a Bernie pin on my jacket, and I was standing in front of an open mic talking to another comic about the election. This was 2 days after the 2016 election, and a girl looked at my Bernie pin, and she basically told me why I got Trump elected. And I was like, first of all, I'm an immigrant with a green card. I can't fucking vote. So I don't know how you think I'm managing to get Trump in office at all. And second of all, being a Bernie supporter, it does not mean that you're automatically a Trump supporter. Being a Bernie supporter just basically means just that you support what Bernie Sanders says, which a majority of it is populist belief systems anyway, like Medicare for all and funding public education and all the progressive ideologies that we're talking about, right now. So, but that's the mentality that we're fighting within the Democratic side. And I think you can, showing people that there's candidates like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez that are championing for all this stuff, and that they're partnering with people like Nancy Pelosi and saying, hey, we're going to make this lady fucking own up to her words. Then I think there's a chance that the discussion of the people that are like, oh, but look how well-spoken Obama is, that sort of stuff will start, we're going to see less and less of that.
I see your point on that. I guess it's hard for some of us that are so down in it, to see that, but yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to say something about the Obama thing. So one thing I've found that works for me, talking personally, and I don't put this online, but just talking to people that were Obama support, everyday Democrats, they don't understand that Chase picked his cabinet. And so it's sort of a side thing. It's like you're not really blaming Obama, but you're saying, look, the Democratic Party, because they want to love Obama still. But when you put it on the institution itself, instead of Obama, he gets to be the great guy that they love. And it's still the party fucked him. So let's not have the party fuck the next guy. Right. I mean,
you know what I've said to a couple of people that get mad when I mention Obama's flaws, and I say, you know what, we can both agree that let's just say for the sake of argument, he's a very nice guy, and he won the vote and he became president. And there has not yet been anyone to hold that office that was able to maintain their own integrity. So no matter how much integrity the person has, so far, I mean, I dare y'all to name one. Not even FDR. He locked up the Japanese. Come on.
Right.
No one has ever held that office and actually been themselves or even stuck true to any of their platform. Democrat, Republican, Independent, it doesn't matter. So and in that way, they're able to then, in their own mind, I guess, scapegoat the system as to all of the different things that he was pushed into. Why Citibank told him, you have to pick these cabinet members. I mean, imagine, did everybody see when Trump had to go talk to the outgoing president, Obama? And like there was footage of him walking back after the meeting with the dropped look on his face like he just met aliens. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying that happened, but I wouldn't put it past them to say, look, everything you thought you were going to get to accomplish, imagine 2% of that actually happening. Remember my cash for clunkers. And I kind of leave you with that. I'm not saying that it's not his fault and that he couldn't have done better, but I am saying that you can't completely fault the individual for the bullshit they end up having to shit out because it's the deep state that's calling most of these shots.
Right. It's the machine. It's the machine. And that's why I'm just so skeptical about Ocasio-Cortez being able to do anything. You know, that's why I'm skeptical, I guess.
I mean, you know, the same thing.
So I guess maybe. Oh, go ahead.
Oh my God! I was just going to say that you know, same thing happened with Andrew Gillum. You know, he started first as in a campaign that's supposedly very progressive. You know, a lot of us thought that this is a great candidate. You know, we actually supported him and everything. And then he changed, but at the same time before that, you already knew that he was taking money from George Soros, for example, right? But we just didn't put that out there online because if you do, then you kind of ruining the whole thing that Democrats want to do because they want to get elected. They want to get him elected, and that's a chance to get rid of Republicans. So in a way, you kind of have to censor yourself. Otherwise, you're demonizing the local community because you're going against the something that supposedly is better, for Democrats. So we stay silent on that, right? So then after the primaries were over, then his whole campaign changed. So now all his staff was changed to David Wasserman Schultz and Hillary Clinton's staff, right? And pretty much, it was the same thing. We kind of stayed also silent because we already knew that he was getting now money from all these different sources. Nobody knew where it came from. So, but at the same time, you have to be silent because he has to win over Rick Scott, right? So if you go against Andrew Gillum, then you're against progressives, right? But this is actually an agenda that came through the Democratic establishment. They're just trying to push that and then trying to make you feel guilty if you say the truth. All you have to do is just state the facts, and actually would have ruined his campaign even more. But what made it even worse is that he sided with David Wasserman Schultz and Hillary Clinton. He went to this synagogue and called David Wasserman Schultz his sister from another mother, and things like that. So he actually
so painful.
I love how they do that wild racism shit too. Just to skip it. Like CP time with Hillary on stage. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So
CP time should have ended any campaign.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No.
Any of them.
Yes.
She is a Klansman. I swear to God.
I went that far, but. Come on. How do you win an election?
If I'm going to use hubris, I'm going to use it against the Clintons.
How do we still breathe fire?
How what?
How do we still breathe fire but still be effective? Like, what is the best way to be effective, to breathe fire, to switch from breathing fire to holding feet to fire, to switch to being effective? And I think that it's smart of us to be skeptical of what power AOC may be able to wield, because we've just seen so many people fail. We get our hopes up and they're dashed, against the rocks, like every time. So yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on that best way, because I find that I can dance at times, and there's times that I just fall on my face and I just make people really mad, which maybe that's inevitably what it is. Looks like Brian's got some points.
Well, hey, Brian, before you start, when you say you make people mad, specifically, give an example. Like, what do you mean? Saying what?
So we were talking about if the establishment person, if a progressive would have won would have been better than the establishment person. Well, we very much had this in Utah during the Senate. well, Mitt Romney ended up winning. And there was a guy by the name of Mitchell Weiss. He'd actually been going across the state for about a year before the actual primaries even happened. And he didn't collect enough signatures. Jenny Wilson is really good friends with Mitt Romney, like family friends with Mitt Romney. Apparently there were musings already that I was hearing whisperings that she knew that if Romney was going to run, that she wouldn't be able to win. So she was just going to use the Senate campaign as a means to springboard herself for her next endeavor without fully appreciating what that endeavor was going to be. Now we know it's Salt Lake County mayor because Ben McAdams, who won against Mia Love, was the Salt Lake County mayor. So that means that people like this guy right here are going to sit in a room. We're going to have a special election to vote for a new Salt Lake County mayor. And so I brought these ideas up, and now I'm a misogynist. And so while that's fucking batshit crazy,
of course,
and that's stupid, it's hard for me to not just call you a fucking moron when you do that, right? And I get that I shouldn't necessarily just placate people who bring up stupid ideas and stupid arguments and logical fallacies. But these are people who are very much connected to the activist community, very much connected to people who see themselves as progressives, even though they really toe kind of a very authoritarian left, as opposed to a progressive left.
It's like they're sleepwalking.
I find that I want to breathe fire all over them, and yet it's just not effective. Makes me feel good, so I'm self, flatulating, I guess, whatever. But I don't know the best means to be effective in those cases. If there really is, it may just be a damned if I do, damned if I don't. And so hopefully that kind of spells out my.
Okay, so you're saying it's hard not to get mad at ignorance, get mad back when people are mad at you. Okay, Brian, sorry.
Here's basically what I do, and what I think we all need to do is explain that we're not beholden to any candidate. We're not beholden to any party. They're supposed to represent us. It's not supposed to be the other way around. There shouldn't be any party loyalty or candidate loyalty. They're supposed to represent us.
Damn right.
Mm-hmm. So that's what we have to remember when we're talking to people about these candidates and about these issues. They're supposed to represent us. We're not supposed to be loyal to them.
Mm-hmm. So what I connected back to with people that don't agree with me is that they just don't necessarily understand where the population is. Like I bring it back to, look, this is math. Like 70% of the country wants Medicare for all. Like if you don't believe that, you're not listening to the right sources. You're in a circle. You're in a bubble. 70%. I don't go to socialism too much, but like when people bring up like socialism is going to lose, democratic socialism is going to lose, I'm like, you know what? Millennials, they don't watch MSNBC like you watch every night, and they don't think the same. Democratic socialism isn't socialism, but they don't think like you do. So if winning is your end game, think differently. I mean, I don't know. I don't attack them personally, but I think there's something to be said about math and science. Like you can put that out and they can go to their cognitive dissonance and disagree with you, but it's a reality. And if you say that, they'll see it again, they'll see it again, they'll see it again. And if they hate Trump enough, join reality,
Well, it's even on the other side of it too. To what Brian was saying is, the party's supposed to represent us. They're supposed to be currying our favor. We shouldn't be currying theirs, And it's very evident in people like my father-in-law, who is a Republican through and through, and he voted for the R. He didn't vote for Trump throughout the entire candidacy. I just watched him talk about how he's a terrible businessman and how he's not really talking about any sort of conservative ideologies and all this other shit. And he still voted for the guy because he had an R by his name, right? So it's like he voted party line because he works for the party, essentially, right? So I think it's one of those things where I'm slowly working him into realizing that, like, Trump's no different than any other candidate. All he's doing is exposing the cracks, right? Like, one of the things that we talked about a couple months ago was about, oh, he's bringing coal jobs back. Look at all these jobs he's bringing back to within coal. That's huge. That's going to be amazing. And I looked at him and I was like, that stuff was done in Obama era, right? Like, that's when the contracts were signed.
Plain coal,
right? So then he looks at me and he goes, "Yeah, you're right. It was done during Obama, but Trump had his hand in it." And I was just like, "All right, at least you admitted that something happened during the Obama administration that leaned towards your values of keeping coal jobs around." So, but to the point of somebody like my father-in-law, it's a lot more incremental than it is that somebody that champions for, hey, Obama's so awesome kind of a thing. But I think there is hope, but there's different degrees that you can push people, but you can push people to be like, hey, you might be a party line voter, but you're actually a progressive. You just don't want to see it because at the moment there's maybe 4 people that represent exactly what you believe,
If anything else, we definitely need more.
Are incredibly important.
What was that?
Sorry about that, John.
I was going to say science and facts are incredibly important, but for a guy like your father-in-law, who's like, yeah, coal jobs, woo, like, what do you think he would do with the fact that gasoline is actually what fucked over coal more than anything? Like, having liquid gas is 100% what has fucked over coal. And clean energy is actually what's, if you want to call it fucking over, is what's fucking over gas. And yet there seems to be this partnership between liquid fuel and coal, even though liquid fuel is the death of coal. But I don't think that fact really fits, because they just have co-opted this idea of like this carbon-based fuel system.
I'm saving that argument for Christmas, Josh.
I was going to say, I think you would lose them in the first sentence, and they're watching the game.
Well,
I don't think most people pay attention. They're not even thinking.
Very few people are going to be converted. Yeah. I mean, that's just reality. It's about enthusing our base and getting millennial independence. They're not furious guy at your Thanksgiving.
And the non-voters, because all the non-voters are waiting for is someone close enough to virtuous that's worthy of their vote. Because you have to earn it. It's not owed.
Right.
That's how I see it.
Yeah.
Amen.
So, I don't know, Julian, we could talk a little bit about, we sort of had a brainstorming session, which I guess we're going to do more of this week sometime, right? Just kind of this idea to kind of build a coalition of candidates that maybe they're all independent, we're not sure, but that they're not backed by money. So, do you want to?
Yes.
Actually,
absolutely. Go ahead.
That sounds like something that goes along with that idea I was trying to float with your messenger there, Madam Lane. And you told me that Ramirez was thinking it might be a better thing to pitch to him. But and bear with me here, it's another Star Wars analogy. But,
that's right. Because it was Star Wars. It was,
I'm not that big of a Star Wars nerd, but to be honest, because they decided to do that fucking resistance nonsense, it just sparking in my head, right? So the resistance, everybody, or most people saw Rebel 1, right? And the idea of Rebel 1 was the person that, and spoiler alert, that was the person that went in and got the plans, but ended up dying in the process.
Right.
And her father was a scientist who infiltrated, almost like he was Dementor. And it's almost like she was a Dementor, but a shifter of the language. She went away, but the idea of her became way bigger than she ever was. He went away, but the fact that he was able to infiltrate allowed her to be successful. And what happened at the end of it was people from outside of that Dementor, let's call them Dem Exit, the real rebels, were able to destroy an entire Death Star. Say that might be taking over several states and flipping them blue or flipping them green or even independent, right? So a tactic that I don't know why the left isn't using it is trick them with the Dem Enter and use Dem Exit to win small seats. they pay so close attention to trying to destroy people in the primaries that they're not doing anything to mess with the Greens and the independents and all that other. So why not put most of our effort into that, while on the face of it, I guess this is far-fetched, and on the face of it, we make it look as though everyone's pushing for the Dementer folk. Even though they know that they're probably going to lose to the establishment anyway, but they get their ideas out there, they sway the voters for the general, and then instead of just getting behind the Democrat, figure out a way to get them behind the third-party candidate. Yeah. So they don't become disengaged again. Like if Bernie had gone green, or if Bernie had gone anything besides endorsement, he would have won, I think.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I have no doubt of that. I honestly think if he had left the Dem Party and just gone independent, he would have had it.
Yeah. But anyway, as far as like trying to use the establishment's espionage tactics against them, that would be something that I would try to employ if I had any influence.
See, I think all of those non-voters and maybe that 12% of Bernie supporters that voted for Trump, they see what's going on too with Ocasio-Cortez, endorsing Pelosi, and they're like, I mean, you're losing all those people too.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's like, how do we really know what those numbers are? Because there's so many people that don't vote. We can't even really know who we're losing. But I think that
people want a radical. I really think they want, well, a sensible radical, I guess we should say, since we're having a nonviolent revolution, right?
Right.
I mean,
well, radical in that they say, I'm going to,
I'm going to do X, and then they go and do X.
Right.
I'm not going to stand for Y no matter what. I won't bend, and then they don't bend.
Right.
Nothing stops them.
Exactly.
You throw money at me, it bounces off and lands in front of your face on the news.
Right. Right.
I want that person.
Well, and I think,
woman, whatever.
I think.
But so the argument from Democrats forever has, I mean, the current argument at least is win at all costs. You just have to beat Trump. So that comes down to the argument of like who's the most electable, which is why they always try to poll that it's not Bernie. So who is the most electable? If you're being pragmatic and it's Trump's the enemy, like they have no alternative though. I mean there are so many holes in every single, and honestly, I follow Peter Douche to find out who it is that the Democrats are attempting to push this week to be. Right. It's like immediate. He's on top of it, right? Oh, Beto they have such a boner for him.
Oh my God. They need to form a band.
Yeah,
right. Booker, Kamala, Beto.
You know what? I wish I still had Photoshop on my computer because I would make that happen.
Yes.
Because that band needs to exist.
Actually, those are going to be the reptiles.
I really could not believe Willie Nelson. That really just shocked me. I saw it on Uphill Media. I wouldn't have even noticed that he had they had a concert and he had a Beto T-shirt on and everything. Willie Nelson.
See, I feel like all that's being used to get like even Willie, like Willie probably is like, no, fuck him nationally. He's like, it was against Ted Cruz. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I'm just saying, like they're leveraging all this local support for him winning Texas into some national campaign, and everyone nationally is going, no, fuck Beto.
Right.
If you think about the history of campaigns and people mudslinging, it's almost like in the past, it usually is, let's all vote for this person because they've proven this other person's bad. And like the Republicans, when Bill Clinton was running, they were trying to get Bush Senior, rest in pieces, motherfucker, to become president a second term. It was anybody but Clinton, right? That's how they were pushing those votes. But now the progressive movement, the leftists, the Democratic Socialists are saying, let's find a person worthy of our vote, rather than pointing out everyone who's not and voting for whoever's left over in the process. Because the latter is the easiest way to think, and the former is the most deep-minded way to think about things. You want someone to do work for you, not someone who's the least likely to screw you.
Right.
But I guess that's another way of saying lesser evilism begets evil.
Yeah. So who is the absolute worst Democrat? I mean, I don't want to hijack this conversation, but like they're all awful. I mean, is Biden at the top of the list? He's the only non-progressive, non-fake progressive. But Biden,
Cory Booker really
Booker he's such a phony piece of shit. Like, who buys his argument?
But that was obvious from like way back, you know.
Did they have to be an office?
And yet, Kirsten Gillibrand is the one who effectively forced Al Franken out. And so this is what nobody talks about. So Al Franken is like, yo, Peter Douche talking about it. What's up? But you've got Al Franken, who did exactly what we would want somebody to do in that situation. Be like, yo, maybe I was shitty. Let's have an investigation. Let's have a nonpartisan investigation into my actions and see how this plays out. And Kirsten Gillibrand was the one who pushed the envelope and forced him out, which neutered the Democrats even more in the Senate. And this is so I would argue that perhaps she's the worst one right now. She's also one of those, I'm not going to accept PAC money while also having these ritzy dollars. Now, if I may hijack this point real quick, talking about who to elect, how do people really want radicals? I think they do, and I think that there are ways to do it where you can use science to your advantage. For instance, by show of nods or shakes of heads, have you guys ever heard of graphene? Graphene.
I've heard.
So graphene was effectively it was okay. So Brian knows what it is. So, graphene is effectively it's a single atom carbon based. What's the word for it? Anyway, single atom carbon based. It's octagonal shaped, and what it is it was accidentally made by graphite. So like effectively like little pencil shavings, and they get tape. They put tape on this pencil shavings, and they get little itty bitty pieces of graphite. They zap it with an intense amount of energy, and what it does is it combines to the single atom thick, which is about as thick as Saran wrap. So think of Saran wrap as near weightless as Saran wrap is on top of a sharp pencil, and nearly weightless by itself would nearly poke a hole through itself by its own weight, near weightless weight. Well, graphene, effectively as thick, would take about the weight of an elephant to poke through. It's also a superconductor. So we have things where one of the biggest problems with wind energy and solar energy is getting that energy to the source, and so getting these superconductors. And we get Joe Biden actually came to the University of Utah, where I work, and said, let's get a moonshot to cure cancer. I'm like, yeah, that's cool and all, but let's get a moonshot to fucking create graphene on a mass-produced level. Graphene also can be used as a way to desalinate. You can create a membrane where the pores are so small that it can allow water through, but will capture the salt. And so in a time where we're going to have we are having these real discussions about, whether it be Cape Town, South Africa, where, we're getting, towns and cities and running out of water, we're going to need something to make sure that people actually have fresh water to be able to drink. And so now we have a way to potentially not just revamp our infrastructure with this superconductor and not just desalinate water, but something that's that thin that can support that much weight. Well, line the goddamn International Space Station with that and protect it from micrometeorites. I mean, there's really there's near nothing that you couldn't do. There was a meteorite, and I know I'm going on a tangent here. There was a meteor that passed Earth a couple of years ago. It had so much platinum in that one meteor, it actually had, if I recall correctly, had more wealth than all of the Earth combined. And so, create a fucking net, something, get it in the Earth's atmosphere and strip mine that son of a bitch. And since graphene is pure carbon, what about the guy that says, you know what, I am going to bring coal jobs back, motherfuckers. If you don't like it, then get the fuck out of my face. But you know what? I'm not going to turn it from a solid to a gas. I'm going to keep it in solid form through graphene. I'm going to revamp it. Eisenhower infrastructure bill, as you guys may remember, had about 100 to 1 return on investment. And so let's do this again and use graphene. I want you to have safe drinking water through graphene. I want you to be able to get where you need to go through graphene. I want you to see the future. Graphene. Brought to you by Josh Cameron.
Let's recapture the CO2 in the atmosphere and make it into that shit.
Yeah,
Huh?
there's
So they
there's
tried that
a
with
viable
methane, and it made an
climate change reversal.
inferior product.
I see. So they tried at least. And also photovoltaic paint. Why didn't anybody ever do anything with that? Why can't I paint my car and have it go?
To what?
Just saying.
I have no answers. You're waiting on me.
Oh, well. No, this guy invented a paint, and it converts sunlight energy into electricity directly.
What?
I'm an industrial designer, so I should know some of this stuff, but it's messed off because I wrote a stupid fucking book.
I was going to say, how do you have time for any of that? While you're tweeting.
But, yeah. No, I'm not trying to derail the conversation anyway. Yeah, good.
So, Josh, are you basically saying that one way to reach out to the younger population is with the new ideas to actually have a solution coupled with the let's focus on the climate rather than just saying climate's going bad, let's do good stuff and try to fix it in 55 years when it's all too late?
It's ridiculous.
You know what I'm saying? Like, are you saying we need candidates that have actual, like, doable things, right?
So yes, exactly that. But also, in much the same way, coming back to my conversation with my son, like the kid said, T-Rex, and I could have said, well, killer whale, right? And like fuck that, and so I could be forcing marine life on him, and he may not give a shit. Well, in our public arena, we've seen that we need to talk about coal, so let's talk about coal. My son needed to talk about a T-Rex, so let's talk about some dinosaurs. Let's talk about what we can really do with coal, maybe. And so I think it's a great way to take and do the exact opposite co-opting. So where these assholes co-opt progressive, and these assholes co-opt a real leftist movement and water it down, well, I'm going to co-opt your right-wing bullshit talking points. I'm going to turn into a super progressive, near Matrix style way to be able to lead us into the future. Because fuck you. And I think that this has real power. I don't know that I'm necessarily the best messenger, because again, sometimes I let my vehemence and my intensity really get ahead of myself, and I'm like, yeah, fuck you, and then, oh, whoops, my bad, right? And once you do that, it's hard to walk that back, and people get scared.
We edit those parts out.
Wait, how do we go from Kirsten Gillibrand to that? Sorry.
She brings out the worst in all of us. Cross her off the list of contenders. She's done.
So, worst Democrat?
Yeah,
right.
that was my fault.
Well, I was going to say something about
Kennedy
Al
the
Franken.
third, just because his name should be said.
I used to have an Al Franken bumper sticker on my old car. And, that, I just think back to the convention and him standing up there with Sarah Silverman. And it's just...
So, speaking of Sarah Silverman, I respect her somewhat, but I watch her show regularly on Hulu, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know, one of these shows. But she's pushing, she's had Cory Booker on and she blows him off, and I love her, but then she fawns over these fucking terrible people. It's like such a It's like watching John Oliver and Stephen Colbert just completely do a disservice.
I mean, but look at the networks that they're on, though, right? Hulu is essentially, they're not really. I mean, they have Redacted Tonight on there, but I don't think it's one of their top fucking comedy shows that they're promoting, right? Like, I don't see ads on Hulu for Lee Camp's show. Yeah. But HBO is another corporate entity. CBS is another corporate entity. So, of course, they want these super popular, like, look at this guy had a band and now he's a fucking candidate for the Democratic Party, and it's like, oh man, that's great, but his policies are shit. Like, nobody's talking about the policies, right? Like John Oliver, I had to kind of pull back from John Oliver when he basically shit on Jill Stein for no apparent reason for 18 minutes, and half of what it was is that she had a fucking CD in the 90s. That's what you're going to... No, not the fact that she actually has some decent policies. You're just going to make fun of the fact that...
The rest of it was misinformation.
Yeah. So that's what they want, but that's what the networks want. That's what sells soap for the network. That's what's going to spike their online views. That's what's going to spike their Sunday night views and stuff like that. So I kind of look at, what network are they on? Why is the Daily Show become this... watered down bullshit?
I used to watch, I hate to admit it, Bill Maher and I used to watch Stephen Colbert when it was the Colbert Report, and
when he was being the spoof, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
he was actually doing satire.
Well, right.
Real satire.
But that stuff's really good to check in with where you think regular people are.
Yeah, I guess
Because
so.
when you watch those shows, you know what like the average, not us, sort of
It
Joe
hurts,
Democrat
but it
is.
hurts. It just hurts too much.
You know, I bite the bullet every afternoon driving home from my day job. I listen to Drive Time right-wing talk radio. Not Rush Limbaugh, but the other guys. And it gets my blood boiling, and by the time I get home, then I go on a Twitter rant. But it lets me, just like Pat's saying, that it lets me in on how people are viewing everything. That's how I know that the word progressive's been skewed. That's how I know they call Hillary Clinton a lefty. Like,
yes, right.
Yeah. Oh, that grinds me up.
We've talked about this quite a bit because I noticed it was Tucker Carlson, and they use the word progressive. They're trying to make sure that is demonized. Yeah, absolutely. But I find now my blood boils just as much hearing the Democrat, the establishment, those people that watch Colbert now, and hearing that.
I used to love my Maddow.
Yeah, I mean, it gets my blood boiling as much, maybe even more, because I'm used to, I know what to expect. You know what you're going to get if you turn on Rush Limbaugh, what you're going to hear. It's old. It's like, okay, but this, I feel like on the Democrat side, it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. I mean, it's the sheep.
Right. It's not saying that the Republicans are better, but it's saying that the Democrats who do that are worse, because instead of just saying, hi, I hate you, and I want to take your money away from you and take your vote away, it's, I want you to have a vote, and I want you to have access to money and access to the things you like. And, hey, I'm your pal. In the meantime, they're still picking your pocket. They're still shanking you.
We'll destroy the ballots if you vote in a race for the real progressive candidate and not Debbie Wasserman.
I think it's a bigger betrayal from the Democrats.
It is, and that's what I feel like. That's where the real battle is. Still, it's not that. I mean, I don't really want Ted Cruz to win, but I see Beto losing as a plus, because maybe they'll get the point. Like, you're not getting. It's not a blue. It's like Thomas Frank said on there was a Real News Network thing recently, and he said, it wasn't really, to call it a blue wave was really a stretch. I mean, it was really just kind of a ripple. It really wasn't much of anything, especially considering how much they've hammered, just non-stop anti-Trump stuff. It didn't work. I mean, not enough. It did a little, but not enough.
But you know what? We were talking about, before we were talking about attention span and the apathy of people, how, they just don't really pay attention and stuff like that. And also, it's lack of information. But the thing really is that if you think about it, this all comes from the mainstream media, and people's reality is shaped on what they see. If you have mainstream media right now, it used to be like, I think it was like 6 corporations. Now it's only 4 that control pretty much every single thing you watch, you read, and you listen to. So that's a big problem. You're going against this giant, monopoly mainstream media, where it's only a few people who are actually trying to put their word on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and now that's being censored. So I think as progressives, we need to have a solid alternative to get the word on, really people to get to see a different view, different reality, I guess. And because I think that's definitely a big issue that's hurting progressives.
Right, and how do we do that? Because we talked about this a little bit a couple of weeks ago, is if we do go somewhere, there's Steemit, there are other places that we can go that aren't censored, but then we're shoved over in this other area, off in this, in this hole where regular people don't see, right? So, and that's by design too. So it's almost like you have to still have one foot, in Facebook and Twitter and all that, and posting things, or else, you're in some other hole.
I definitely don't have an answer to that, but in my mind is cranking away here, and the idea of doublespeak is really taking on like a seriously a big forefront in my mind of what should happen. As far as like all of us getting censored, well, what if there was a way to be able to convey this information, but use a different kind of rhetoric that doesn't get picked up by these algorithms that are shutting everybody down. Like, I noticed if you post an article from a space that Facebook thinks is fake news, or they're going to say Snopes said that's bullshit, and then it turns out it's really true because Snopes is crap. But instead of posting that article, why not take a couple of screen caps from a couple of places and then write about it as your post instead, and show the screen caps of the article, maybe even with a screen cap that has the link in it, so people would have to type or convert it to text, because that's one way to skip a bot. But I don't know, like, we need to be coming up with alternatives to conveying the information that's going to reach these people that don't speak the language we speak. I don't know, just like for a starting point of thinking about it.
Has anyone else had the experience of, I don't know, I think a lot of us have cut cable, right? I don't know.
Oh yeah, I don't even know what the hell commercial is.
2.5 years for me, I think. Have any of you guys had the experience of noting, you start talking to people that clearly are still, have the plug into their heads, and they're all saying the same things. Yeah. And it's really weird.
It's even more lockstep than it was a decade ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and you start realizing they're being told what to think. There's no other way to put it, and they don't even realize it. And it's just,
it's you can attribute that to people have been crying about how the media has become more editorialized, right? Like, you don't get the news. They're not reporting facts anymore. They're reporting facts, telling you the opinion. They're giving you the other side as if that's going to be balanced news. And you can draw a direct line from that right back to the education system getting screwed over that Josh was mentioning. If you teach people what to think and not how to think, then they'll be more susceptible to people telling you what to think about this situation, and not, here's a situation, why don't you think about it? The news is not on your side anymore. And I'm not trying to sound like Trump. I don't think everything they say is fake, but I do think that it's all skewed one way or the other. There is no non-biased news out there, except maybe the real news. But again, they're kind of biased towards us.
Well, a lot of corporate news isn't really journalism; it's punditry.
Yeah, true.
Journalism is more about telling you what the information is, so you can decipher what that means to you, or what that means to your community, or whatever it is. But this is just they're shouting opinions at each other, and they're telling you what your opinion should be, and in turn, kind of bullying you into it to be like, oh, all of our viewers think like this, and if you view our shows and want to be in the same friend circles, then maybe you should parrot the same belief systems. And it's like, they're not journalists. They're all pundits. That's all they are. And I'm sure they have journalism degrees, and that's all great and dandy, but you're not doing journalism. There are real journalists out there that are reporting what's happening and letting you figure out what that means to you. And that's becoming rarer and rarer in this sort of clickbaity world that we're living in right now.
Yeah, does anybody know why Aaron Mate left Real News Network?
Wow. Did that happen very recently?
Yeah, I just saw it yesterday.
Okay.
Maybe?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I just wondered why.
Because I respect his integrity, so I wonder.
Oh my gosh, I loved that.
I hope it didn't ruin the show.
Oh, sure. The interview where he really grilled James Risen about the reality winner.
That was good.
Wow, that was, very ballsy. I thought that was a great. Oh, Julian, I don't think I ever sent you that link, did I? You have to see
no,
that.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Aaron Mate has been, what's the guy? Luke Harding. Back like a year ago, he was grilling Luke Harding, who we now know was the guy behind the Guardian fake article recently. But Aaron Mate is really, I don't know. I'm sad to see him go from Real News Network. I'm just wondering if there's more to the story there or what. I don't know.
I hope he's branching out. That'd be a good thing.
Yeah, Real News Network has been one that I've really trusted. I haven't seen anything that, like The Intercept and The Guardian, you start kind of seeing their slant, But I haven't seen that with Real News Network. Anybody?
I haven't seen News Network slant too much. They take a pragmatic position on things sometimes, especially after when they were being a little more rooting for the radical, and then the radical didn't win, and they say, well, okay, so let's try to make the best of this situation, and then they have a roundtable discussion about it. So that's one place where I think they fall off a little bit as far as holding the line. But no, I have trouble finding better news anywhere than that. So.
Yeah, agreed. So what is the answer then? Build a media network of I don't know. What is the answer?
I mean, I think that the one important thing is the internet, right? I think we have to protect freedom on the internet, and also what a lot of people many people don't know is that the internet has been built as a as a way to avoid censorship, pretty much. It's an open platform. It's an open standards. It's an entire community that for many years has been there and pushing for freedom of speech. They actually work against establishment for decades. Really, if you look at the open source community, it's a long history, and these people pretty much are on our side. But there's like a disconnect because a lot of people are not really aware of all those things. So I think right now, an important thing may be to emphasize open platforms, open standards. There's no reason why everybody should be running to a private company to just communicate between each other. There was already a standard before there was Twitter or anything like that. There was IRC. There was internet, there were news groups, there were, things like that. But we always see establishment always try to centralize everything to gain control. So it's important for us to decentralize that and be, relying on actual open standards, open platforms, open software. I think that's something that we should emphasize in the movement.
Speaking of which, Josh, you want to say a couple things in your other duty? Decentralized data, open platforms, apps for cell phones.
Oh, I know, right?
Wink,
so,
wink.
I know, wink, wink. All right, so I need my Raptor head, put on my Raptor head. So this is actually our voice. One of the things that I'm most proud of is I'm good friends with our tech guru who magicked this shit out of his ass and created everything. So this guy's name is Corey Henderson. We both Corey and I went to see Sam Ronan. You guys might remember Sam. He was running for State House in Ohio, and then he ran for DNC chair, and he was the one that got Tom Perez to admit that the primaries were rigged, even though he, later on that same day walked it back on Twitter. He still undermined his own credibility. How? Because Sam was able to get him to raise his hand and say, hey, guess what? And, coming back to my point that I've made a few times. Well, so we got involved in Our Voice. It seemed like a really good idea about how do you get people who don't really see an attachment to a political party, don't really see an attachment to a political identity, want to run for office. Not only did he create an app where anyone, no matter what sort of political affiliation, can download a free app, can get free canvassing tools, so as robust as NGP Van, if you've ever used that or are familiar with people who have, and you actually own the data. We don't even own the data, so we just broker the data, get you connected to necessary technology to canvass your neighborhoods, and then when you own that data, you can do whatever you want with it. You can sell it, you can share it. Here in Utah, for instance, and this is a point I made to Graham Elwood, here in Utah, the Green Party of Utah and the Libertarian Party of Utah are considering becoming one coalition, becoming one party. And if they do that, well, let's say that they use this Our Voice app, and let's say that they have 50, 100, 200 people across the state that are canvassing. And if they canvass whatever data they collect, they can feed to a central hub. That central hub can then feed that out to relevant candidates within different areas and become competitive. You become competitive through data. This idea that knowledge is power, well, you're fucking right, it is. And not only that, but if you actually have people canvassing on the ground, that information is going to be far more relevant and useful than polling data that typically only is done through landlines. And so not only is it a free app, but we also uploaded it to GitHub. So it's completely open source. So anyone who would ever want to do a pull request, and they could actually get the source code, and they could add on to it and make their own app and make their own product, because we believe in the idea of legitimate democracy. And what I love about this is I think that it is 100% a democratic socialist way to move forward, in the sense that somebody who wants to run for office is effectively an entrepreneur. There's somebody who decides that they see a vacuum in society that they want to fill with a good or service, in this case, a service. And with democratic socialism, it taps into the good parts of capitalism that want to reward somebody. In this case, they get an office and be able to have some sort of legislative power, but they want to reward somebody who puts a lot on the line and takes that leap and opens up that business, or in this case, canvassing for their office. But it prevents people from being able to become overly parasitic. It's not going to pay you millions of dollars. It's not going to allow you to go ahead and siphon off of your workforce. And so I like this idea that we can offer necessary technology to regular people, anyone who wants to run for office, whether you're Republican, Libertarian, Democrat, Green Party, progressive as fuck, whatever you are. And what's important about that is that we'd be naive to think that only Democrats can save the world, right? Or that only progressives who involve themselves with Democrats can save the world. Like, if nothing else, while I think many libertarians are a little batshit crazy, they are highly progressive when it comes to interventionary war and regime change war. They are absolutely against that. And so from the get-go, they're likely more progressive than your average Republican. So to allow some of those people to get a little bit more power, a little bit more influence, and a little bit more leeway or movement within a legislative race, I think can be a good thing. And then it hopefully will get regular working class views and attacking from a multi-pronged approach from every level of political identity and every facet of left and right, far left, far right, and everything in between, and help us hash out where on that overwhelming overlap on a Venn diagram of human needs and that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Let's fill that, and then let's figure out our ultimate political agendas after that. And so this is where I really see a huge, a strong, I guess, stance for our voice and this vacuum that we're filling. And just like any small company that starts up, we are a 501c3, so nonprofit, nonpartisan, but we work on volunteer hours, and volunteer hours are unstable sometimes. But we're making a lot of movement. We've got we get views out through Progressive Rampage, which is a podcast that myself, Chris, and another on the board of Our Voice, Corey Cheney. So her husband Jesse is a host on Progressive Rampage, and so we're getting the ideas out there, trying to be those entrepreneurs and hopefully help others rise up, challenge the system, take the red pill in a non-shitty, crazy, batshit libertarian YouTube way, but red pill in a matrix way, where you kind of wake up, you look at the real world, the desert of the real, where we're just batteries, and how do I use that battery, that energy from myself and that battery, and use it to kind of flip the paradigm in much the same way of, we need to talk about coal, well, let's talk about graphene then. And so we're really trying to enable people to stand up, reach for the stars, and hopefully you'll learn that even if you don't win, an office itself maybe is zero-sum game, but political power, political prestige, whatever you want to call it, whatever energy you are amassing, there is no zero-sum game. You've created this political identity, you've created this following, so use it. If you lose, then run for your next office and use that. And so, yeah, that's my spiel.
Josh, that is one hell of a pitch you've been working on. I do want to throw in one piece. Our Voice USA is 501c3, nonpartisan. Progressive Rampage is a podcast myself, Josh, and Jesse are pushing that is actually partisan. And so therefore our voice is not affiliated directly with Progressive Rampage, even though there's a board member and a spokesperson working on the podcast, if that makes any sense. I just want that to be clear. But it's focusing on what, not to get partisan again, but focusing on what Bernie Sanders tried to draw attention to, which is if you think about all the different problems that everyone faces that brings the country together, the right, the left, the center, those who don't vote, those who really want to vote, it's a class problem. It's really, I mean, racism is an issue, and not getting, food insecurity is an issue, and homelessness is an issue, and all these things. But really, when it boils down, it comes right back to class and what one group is trying to do to keep the other group from gaining any power. And so one thing you can do is to take money out of politics. And so as people go and pay for the ability to connect with something like NPG Van, the app gives you an opportunity to save yourself $20,000 on a major campaign and be able to even do, eventually we're going to have phone banking through this thing. You'll be able to contact and verify people across the country just to work for, let's say, Tim Canova, or just to work for, I don't know, the Ross Perot's of the world, or anybody.
Right, and that's what impressed me. Oh, you talk, Martin.
I just have a quick question. NGP Van, wasn't that the same company that got into trouble during the primary? During the 2016 primary, if I'm not mistaken?
I can't remember all of the details now, but there's a guy named Dan
Weren't they tied to Debbie Wasserman Schultz in some way?
You're thinking of that other group.
Somebody in
I'm
Bernie's
thinking of something else.
Isn't that NGP Van where somebody in Bernie's campaign got into some system? Anybody remember this?
I'm not quite sure.
And then they closed him out where he couldn't. Help me out here. Anybody?
The initial smears. You're talking about the initial smear that Bernie's campaign hacked Hillary's campaign or something.
Right.
But I don't know if that was
I
don't know who that was. So you could be right. You could be wrong. I don't know.
There's something with NGP.
CrowdStrike was the thing that Clintons were using, though.
No, I know that, but there's something with NGP.
Yes, later on it was CrowdStrike, but during the initial,
it was voter.
I think it was NGP Van. If I'm not,
well,
I have been.
I
don't want to confirm.
I think it was the minivan, right? I think that's very much what the old Democratic Party uses. And by the way, that database is controlled by the DNC.
Yeah,
so
right.
There's a conflict of interest for progressives to use that.
Okay.
And so this kind of decentralizes the data. Is the way this concept works. You get your own server when you connect with it, and that's where you keep it, and you do what you want with it.
Well, I love the fact that Corey just kept talking about we're keeping the money out of this. This is not about money.
That's really important.
Yeah.
Any money that comes in, it's literally paying people to provide code expertise. Honestly,
and I mean that's what we kept doing. What we were doing, interviewing candidates. And, I realize it's just, it's a really small thing that we're doing. But I thought, well, it doesn't cost money to go to the polls. And all we have is a Zoom account on the internet. And we interview candidates. And if someone happens to see them, then they can go vote for them. But then we have the other problem, which is, in the end, Julian, as you know, I mean, what are we going to do about the election fraud? Not voter fraud, election fraud.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Maybe instead of trying to go volunteer for just candidates, people should be focusing on trying to become the election integrity folks. I don't know what you call them, election workers, poll workers. Like maybe we need more folks who are altruistic, like the set that I see before me, to actually go be those people. And I
think California's got a lot of that going on. There are a lot of people that get how fucked it is that are taken over in California. But that doesn't mean they can't stop us. But anyone compelled to fight these problems, dude, go work for your local election bullshit, whatever it is.
But when we have these machines controlling things, that's the problem that I see. And this is tricky for me because I've been kind of embroiled in it for a couple of weeks, really deep in it with the election integrity people. I think they mean well, but there are a lot in that are in that any blue will do camp. and kind of biased, and that bothers me. I think we need more real, nonpartisan election integrity efforts, because what happens is, as I said, you end up with a grassroots candidate up against an establishment Dem, and they're not going to fight for that. So, well,
the regular election is still not the same as a primary. In the primary, the protections in the primary will never match any of the general election stuff. It's up to the party, and that's why you have to take over the state democratic process.
Even the DNC fraud lawsuit, though, it failed, and I think it's picked back up again. I'm not quite sure. That's part of the group that actually doesn't like Bernie anymore because he didn't back it.
Oh,
but
right.
But I was a signer on to that. I gave $27 to the Bernie campaign. That money went straight to Hillary Clinton's coffers. And one thing that exposed, which another good point, if you don't win your election, that doesn't mean you didn't make a difference. So just because it seems like you won't win in a red state doesn't mean you shouldn't run anyway. But one thing that lawsuit exposed was the fact that in these primaries, there is no election integrity anyway because they're private corporations. They don't have to follow any rules. There's nothing that says they have to not have superdelegates or that they even have to count your vote.
Yep.
So why? I mean, it matters to be in a primary because your vote has so much more weight. But at the same time, just like Mr. Douche here is saying, is that we actually have to infiltrate these things and make sure that they have integrity, or else what's the point?
Yep.
Yeah. You can also run for your county clerk's office, and so that way you can be in charge of counting the actual ballots. And then if you see some shenanigans, you can be a whistleblower. And it's going to be really hard for somebody to then get you out because you're now in an elected office.
Right.
And chances are somebody would probably, the average person would probably want a whistleblower to be in charge of
so take
like
California, Renan, or no, not Renan, who was it was I'm on a whole other topic. Never mind. Moving on. But Maria Estrada is going to beat Renan in 2020. That's all I wanted to say. Go back to whatever the hell you guys were talking about.
I was going to bring
I certainly hope she does. I certainly hope so.
Who's Padilla? Padilla is who I was talking about.
I was going to bring up something about... Oh, go ahead.
No, we just have to oust Padilla. I mean, that's where these people that certify the ballots, the Secretary of State in your states, and some of these people that oversee some of this stuff, we need to take over the party.
Those guys are bought.
Yeah.
Yeah, the DNC pro lawsuit actually continues on December 11th.
Okay,
which is in a few days. So that's actually going to be a good opportunity to enter into a discovery process. So they will actually go and have to investigate Debbie Wasserman shows and all that. So that should be really interesting. But also on the issue now with what's happening with Brenda Snipes, I think that's really important now to focus on the issue, as I was mentioning earlier, on election integrity, election fraud, to really kind of put it out there, and hopefully that will create a movement that, everybody joins and actually, pushes for that, just the whole issue on electoral reform. The other issue there, aside from election fraud, is the issue with candidates, progressive candidates, and how hard it is for them to win campaigns. I've been watching all these different campaigns since 2016. There are many candidates who run, and at the end they're just so disappointed at the end because there's so much time they spend, so much energy, money, and they don't have the resources. It's just really difficult for progressive Democrats to really be competitive against establishment candidates. So I think, in my view at least, I think that the solution is to, as you were saying, Kelly, is so you're saying, Kelly, it's actually to have a coalition, having kind of like a slate where all the candidates run all together, they all support each other, right. And it's a slate that all the progressive organizations support. So this has to be kind of like a united effort. That's basically what happened with the Andrew Gillum campaign here in Florida. You had the Democratic establishment, they had the slate they created. So they had all the candidates there. And then they put in there the Washington Schultz, all that. So they just gave up the polls. They just gave that people, all they do is just vote for whatever he said there. It doesn't matter. It was just good. So if we have the opposite, we have actually a progressive slate that we can just actually advertise that with all the candidates. It'd probably be a better effort, and you avoid having to waste so much time and energy and resources when you run just kind of like a one campaign for all progressive candidates versus everybody just doing it by themselves.
Right, and so that's a united, very strong force that I think would really scare the shit out of the establishment.
Yeah,
that's what we need. I mean, I don't know, and I had hoped that the election integrity, I sort of envisioned this SWAT team, right? Well, we know how that actually went down. It was nearly impossible to try to do any of the stuff we set out to do. Haven't really talked about that online yet, but I actually spoke to Brenda Snipes myself twice, face to face, and this was the day before the media and all, the craziness showed up there. But I flat out asked her about that statute. It says that people should be able to watch what's going on. It's just a regular person. Once the poll closes, if they want to sit there and see, as long as there aren't other voters still in like voting booths, they should be able to do that. Well, we know from your video that wasn't allowed. And she didn't even know. She just was like, yeah, but she just gave non-answers, right? And then now, as far as I know, as of Thursday, no one has received any response for the records request. Well, this is the thing that the election integrity guys, not to, they work really hard. I don't mean to crack on them, but they're saying this is the solution. Get your candidates to ask for, file a public records request, which Brian and I started doing the last month before the election, is saying, hey, here's how you do this, and you can. They don't have to answer. They're still, to this day, have not provided it. And one candidate, I think actually some Republican, I forget who, received notice back that they could pay $700 for it. So apparently they can charge you for these records requests. So what recourse does a candidate have other than what Tim's doing, because he's a law professor and he knows, he's still fighting it, but your average candidate is not going to be able to do that and not have the backing. He's gone into, you know more than I do, Julian, but I know he's, the campaign's gone into debt. At what personal cost are you running for office, So I don't know what the answer is there, but anyway, sorry, I digress. But Brenda Snipes had no answers, and they seem to be able to just do whatever they want. They've got this big glass window up. Oh, the other statute was that it said that somebody from the campaign could be in the room, I guess it's the tabulation room, wherever. Not that you could have told anything of what was going on. It was just utter chaos. Just boxes of stuff everywhere and trucks lined up out. You couldn't have told anyway what was going on. But they had that cordoned off, and I said, hey, here's this statute. Where I was there with John Brakey, and I said, we're with Tim Canova's campaign. Can we come in? Here's this statute. And they just stared at me blankly no, you're not going in there. So there was you can't do anything. You can't do a damn thing. So what do we do about that?
Well, that goes into something Josh brought up earlier, is you got to educate people. You got to tell them what it is. When it comes down to immigration, it's I've been at the border at Canada and had to explain to border agents what a green card is as they're staring at this thing that says that it's, from the U.S. Immigration Services or whatever. But people just don't know. People don't know.
Yeah, but okay. Stuff. Yes, so, true. But in this case, at Broward County, Brenda Snipes, there's no excuse for that.
Well, no, that's blatant ignorance. But in terms of people, people working on in these offices, they probably don't know the rules. They probably don't know all this stuff. So when you present that stuff to them, they're kind of confused as to where that information is coming from. But what's kind of good about it is now that that's been exposed, now more people kind of are trying to understand the rules.
I don't know. Do you think it's all over? Everybody, is it all over CNN and MSNBC? All this stuff about Brenda Snipes? I mean, I know that it was for a couple of days, but are all the details of this in there? No, she should have been fined or in prison or something for illegally destroying ballots, and she was not. I mean, the courts found that was illegal, and
It
she
doesn't
was
have to be
still
mainstream, though.
in her job. Nobody heard about it,
And now it's like she resigned at first, but now Rick Scott fired her, so she rescinded her resignation and she's fighting back as if she's somehow a cult hero.
Right.
Because a Republican told her she can't have a job anymore for cheating.
And she shouldn't have even been in there still these past 2 years.
Does that make her part of the resistance? I just don't know. How does that? Where does that cross?
Yeah, exactly. I think so. That's part of the problem.
Well,
Yeah.
being that the hashtag resistance is the hashtag assistance, then yes, it actually would.
So right. Is she a 2020 candidate yet?
Oh, hey.
Oh, God. There you go.
Another rising star.
We'll wait
It's
till
great.
January, right? You got to wait until all the New Year's guff is over, and then she'll launch into it. You know, that's her big surprise.
I wish I knew the answer, though, Kelly. Honestly, like, what do you do about this? Like, you're actually there where they're counting the ballots, and you have video, and nothing is still being done about it.
Mm-mm.
But the only thing I know to do is record more video, get more evidence, put it out publicly as much as possible. You know,
But
people I know are going to fight like hell. I know attorneys, and people know attorneys, and there's, you know.
And then
We're
there's
ready
people
for
that
more
don't want
fraud
to see
next
that in their
time.
community.
But it doesn't mean they won't still win.
Right. Well, I don't know. It is discouraging. I mean, I wish Tim luck, and I hope that, you know, this gets somewhere, because it shouldn't be happening. Brenda shouldn't have even still been in that job. And the fact that nobody paid attention to it until it was establishment candidates, you know, at each other fighting, then they're concerned about it, you know.
You know, all of this scenario is still keeping me pretty hopeful, though, because a long time ago, nobody was exposing this. And then a little bit after that, a few people mentioned it, and they were called conspiracy theorists. And there's nothing wrong with the election. And then 2000 rolls around, and everybody gives a damn. And since then, we've gotten incrementally better at picking it and getting faster at picking at it, because we weren't even pointing out the discrepancies, really, during the 2016 primaries until after over half of them were done. They weren't making a lot of the rounds in social media anyway, but now they're catching Broward County while she's doing it.
Yeah.
So I would have to say the next step after that is we'll catch it before it takes place.
But the problem
The
problem again, I think, is that all of these, since the HAVA Act, which was what, 2002, I guess, the problem is now, so I don't know how many of you guys know the history of it. I've just been learning it the past few months, but so because of what happened in Broward County with the hanging chads, that's what made everybody say, oh, we should move to all this electronic stuff. So now we have a HAVA, but they're all I see it, again, as it's money corrupting a system. It's these voting machine manufacturers are like going to grab the HAVA money, and because obviously that money is not going to, they couldn't even pay to have two people be in the car so they could transport ballots legally, right? But I guarantee you ES&S made plenty of cash off of that deal. And so, and again, look it up, or I'll post it again. I keep posting it a lot. But yeah, DHS is forming these committees with ES&S, Dominion Voting Systems, and they're going to figure it all out for us behind closed doors. That should scare the shit out of everyone. And I don't know what the answer is. We can run around, and again, I mean no disrespect to the election integrity folk. They know a lot more than I do. But I see them fighting to get ballot images and arguing over whether or not ballot images can be altered. And most IT people I ask say, yeah, they can be altered. Like, that's real easy. But, you know, they're running around fighting to get, because the problem was that most of Florida, or actually most of the country, wasn't saving the ballot images. There's like some switch on the machine that all you have to do is save the ballot images so that if, you know, there's a problem, you have that to compare to paper ballots if people don't throw them away. But the problem is, if those ballot images can just be altered, what the hell good does it do? So they're fighting to get them to follow the law of saving these images. And it just seems like all this scurrying around down here, keeping everybody busy while, you know, the real decisions about how all of that is working, how is it that one state has these machines and another state has these other machines? Who's making all those decisions? And so the real corruption, I feel like, is way up here. So what's a little grassroots candidate going to do down here? Like, have this little rinky-dink election integrity team like I was trying to do? It was ridiculous. I mean, I'm just like wandering around the halls trying to ask Brenda Snipes questions. I knew that it was pointless what I was doing. I tried, but anyway, that's my story.
So maybe the answer here, you know, how do we fix this? You know, the douche said that he knows plenty of lawyers. You know, Tim Canova himself is a law professor, and so maybe it's about crafting a bill and then running it as a proposition and having a prop and effectively lay it down and have the consequences as you know, violating these terms of service, if you will, and have that laid out. And here in Utah, at least, we had 3 propositions where one was medical cannabis, probably the most conservative medical form of marijuana, even though no flower, there's no combustion whatsoever, but still, in a super red state, passed overwhelmingly. In fact, I think I saw a stat that said out of all the congressional candidates combined, there were still like 10,000 more votes for medical cannabis than those candidates. Well, then we also had you know, when Obamacare first came into law, Utah was like, "Whoa, poor people! You guys want us to help poor people?" And so we never expanded Medicaid as allowed with Obamacare. So now all this money is going into an escrow account that we never pull from. And so we had a Proposition 3, which expands Medicaid. And so, you know, the voters came together, created the proposition, voted for it, and then we also have Proposition 4. Proposition 4 is called Better Boundaries. And what it does is it creates a nonpartisan board of 7 people that will then work with the state legislatures to redraw the gerrymandered districts. And there's certain protections put in place where 4 years going into it, you can't hold elective office, and 4 years leaving it, you can't hold elected office. That way you can't redraw a district and then run for that district. You got to wait 4 years. And so because of these propositions, and because you know, Salt Lake City is very progressive for the most part, we had an 82%, I think it's like 81.89% voter turnout. Utah County, which is probably the second largest county, if I'm not mistaken, which is, you know, very right-leaning, had a 62% turnout. And so it seems that propositions, especially in red areas, especially in Utah, are ways to get people out. And it's a way to circumvent the law by writing the fucking law, actually having citizens come together, concerned citizens, with very informed people like Tim Canova and, you know, those who participate in the vinegar shenanigans with Peter Douche, you know, to come together and write the ramifications of fucking us over, as well as writing the protections to prevent that fucking over. Is it going to be 100%? Of course not. There's no such thing. But it's definitely a great way, and it's going to incite people who are fucking pissed and who want to throw a rock through the window of the system, give them a means to channel that anger and to follow it.
Here, here.
Amen. Totally agree with you there.
Yeah. Hey, what's up, Snork?
trying to hit the mute button. First on the issue of the counting the ballots, getting some integrity. Our main problem is getting enough people to do something, because apathy is just incredible here. I don't know about other places, but what we need to do is, I feel, is a virtual custody chain for the ballots. We need to have multiple cameras on the ballots everywhere. We need to be saying who is moving the ballots, what the license plates number of the cars are, what's the officers' badges that are allowing it to happen. We need to have deals done ahead of time that, do your officers understand that this is illegal? Can we have an officer suspended once so that they're informed before they do it that it's against the law, so they can no longer be a cop if they mishandle the ballots or allow the ballots to be mishandled. When we have ballots going into a truck for transport, there needs to be a seal put on that truck. That truck cannot be opened until it gets to the other end. We cannot have police officers allow a truck to be pulled over and multiple cars come out and switch boxes onto the truck. This did happen, correct?
Oh, yeah. If you could have seen what I saw. I mean, it's just, there were just moving trucks, like Penske, and, you know, it was just insanity everywhere. I mean, anything could have happened. I'm not saying it did, but anything definitely could have. And apparently people were finding these seals on the ground outside. Did you hear anything about this, Julian? About seals? Well, anyway, I know Pat has to go, so.
Well, anyway, those seals should be registered. If those seals hadn't been there, then there should have been automatic revote.
Well, that's what
Tim's
Tim's calling
chain of custody.
That's why he's calling for a revote, because there's no proving that, or the chain of custody, once that's broken, there's just no validity.
Yeah, once that's done, it wasn't really vote. Right. Now, the Constitution has a thing in it for a census every 10 years. And the president has to spend any money possible. And do you realize that a president asked a question by a customs agent, or not customs agent, a census agent, has to answer all questions. The person's not supposed to say what he hears. He's just supposed to mark it on there. But a census agent has the ability to ask the president of the United States anything. They cannot, you cannot plead the fifth for a census question.
Oh, hey guys, just a note, I know, Pat, you need to go. If I can't click on, or if you're sending me a message that's private on Zoom, if I click on the chat, it posts it up online. So that's why I don't click on it usually. But anyway, okay, well.
Right. Oh, I'm tapping out.
Yeah, thank
you guys so much
for coming. All right.
Great conversation.
Yeah,
you guys
good
are
to
awesome.
see you.
I appreciate it.
I know we don't have that many people watching, but you guys really need to read this. It's very funny. I
appreciate it.
I'm on the lap.
I posted links on YouTube and Facebook.
Yeah, and well, Chris is still here, but check out his comedy stuff too. It's very cool.
All right, thanks, Brian.
Yeah, it is almost one. See, Mitch
Thanks for doing this, Pat.
Good night, guys.
Yeah, okay.
Good night.
Good night.
And the only way to combat the seals being on the ground is multiple people photographing it happening.
Yeah.
Who's happening it? Who's there allowing it to happen? Because we have to start holding the people accountable that are allowing it to happen. And we have to say, okay, this person reported to you. Are you taking control of this? Or are you on the list to go to? And that is the only way. People start having their baby chain starting to be in danger. They'll start reacting to people around them. Until then, it's not going to happen. Blockchain. I am really concerned of blockchain without a human presence, and that has to be almost exactly like it. And my personal belief is that there is a way to hack the blockchain, and the people that have that ability are the people we don't want to have that ability. So the only way that we can do it, but the blockchain is handy for most people. So what I believe we have to do is multiple redundant channels that are independent of each other. So when the boxes of ballots are transported and some get pulled over by the cops and allowed to be replaced, we have another copy that's transmitted in 1, 2, or 3 different methods, and those methods need to agree, or we need to say, okay, for some reason, only the ones that were on the truck don't match up. We say, who was in charge of the truck? What police officer was following the truck?
I know.
It's like
you're gone.
it's like the way we're dealing with it right now. In real life, we have crypto in action, so we don't get to see what's happening with physical evidence. And on the internet, we're getting transparency because people who are capable of getting in are exposing it with what little video they can get. And we need to flip that. We need crypto backup on the internet, and we need so much transparency it hurts. We need, like you're saying, we need dash cams showing the car. I want to be able to go on Periscope and say, I'd like to watch everything happening in Florida right now involving boats, and have a million screens pop up that I can select from and just watch it. So we can all be holding ourselves accountable, right?
Do you see
Again,
that?
I don't see how elections are less important than the census. If we have unlimited funds for the census, we should have unlimited funds for voting.
But I mean,
Goddamn right, they should be coupled.
This
Extra
is
cameras
same
in every place that handles a ballot should have extra cameers.
All right, I'm gonna tap out. But this is great. Thank you guys so much. And yeah, hopefully we'll keep in touch.
It's nice to meet you, Krish.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Have a good night, guys.
Good night.
I'm going to hang out
Nice
a little
to meet you,
bit
Krish.
longer.
I am also going to tap out. I got work in the morning.
Okay.
And
See, Mitch is in
State Capitol for medical cannabis.
Oh,
I'm scaring everybody away.
No, you're just.
I only have about
just,
5 minutes left in me.
It's just late. That's all, Mitch. But no, I agree with you about all of that with the transparency. But you know, to me, this is all the other issues don't even matter if we can't fix this. I mean, it's. I don't know. I'm very disturbed by what I saw in Broward County, and I don't think it's not just Broward County. This is happening everywhere.
Don't you see it kind of playing out like we're discovering where the true base of the problem lies? Like at first you're like, well, we need a better candidate, and then we're like, well, we need to actually infiltrate the primaries. And we're like, well, we actually need to do something about the people that are getting picked to even show up in the primaries. And it's like, well, what about the voting during the primaries? It doesn't matter now. And in the general, they're fucking over the election integrity. So we should worry about the election integrity first.
Yeah, I think.
What's before that now? Like, I guess we need somebody to be secretary or to be some kind of position to ultimately call the shot. Like, not only do we need people working in the polls, but we need somebody in a position of power that can back them up.
Yeah.
I think that the whole issue with election integrity, the important thing is to have enough pressure. You have to have a strong demand, and I think right now there hasn't really been any demand. Really, right now we've seen that now because of what happened really in Broward County, pretty much. So I think we should take advantage of that and really make that this like a spearhead of this movement to push for electoral reform, election integrity, because we've seen all the issues that happen with, for example, the minimum wage, $15 an hour. Obviously Bernie Sanders started that, and then he started just pushing, and a lot of people started talking about it. Now we have Amazon implemented it, now we have Whole Foods. So, and by the way, that was implemented not at the political level, but it was more like at the community. It was outside of politics that got implemented. So we can do the same thing. Eventually what's happening is a process, but it has to start with a strong demand. If there's not a demand, nothing's going to happen. So I think that right now we have to take advantage of that, what's happening in Broward with Brenda Snap and everything, and build that into a non-partisan issue. So it's just to get as many people behind that issue as possible, and hopefully that eventually develop into a strong electoral reform.
And whatever happens with it too, we need a lot of people producing media that autopsies it. We need video of it. We need somebody writing a couple of different books. Seriously, you just can't let those issues go, or else they just fade into history.
Right. Well, that's why I'm actually going to see if I can get this statistician to come on and show those graphs and explain it better. I don't know if he will, but I have his number, and I'm going to see if I can try to do that, because what he said, I heard him say this over the phone, was like, this is huge and will shake the whole country if people realize what's going on.
It's Banana Republic style shit, right? It's absolute facade.
What I understand is it's it's basically this guy Benny Smith uncovered it, fraction magic, and it's where they just take a fraction of each vote and move it. They move things around. So
if anyone's seen Superman 3, I believe Richard Pryor came up with a way to make a lot of money, taking the little fractions of a percent at the end of a transaction at a bank, and he consolidated it all and made $1 billion, I think, or something.
Or Office Space.
Yeah. They got that from Superman. Yeah, right.
Yeah, that happened in real life.
That happened in real life? Is that where they got it from?
Oh.
Wow, so they're taking that, then what she's describing is they're taking it and they're applying it to another commodity, right?
Yeah, that happened way back in the 70s or 80s.
Oh, man.
And the other thing from Office Space that we need is the smashing the machine.
Definitely not the jump to conclusions, Matt.
Oh, no, not that one. No,
Iowa has one of the most secure primary versions. It's called a caucus here.
Yeah, we have that in Maine.
And it's all there. But even the caucuses were rigged in Iowa 2016.
Did they just pack the rooms?
Well, what they did was the main one was in Des Moines. Where they said, okay, everybody leave, but it's over, go ahead and leave. And it's on film, it's on YouTube, so you can go independently verify this. The Bernie people left, but the Hillary people had been already told to sit down. So the Bernie people left and they revoted.
That sounds an awful lot like the bank bailout.
Yeah, but all they had to do was lose Des Moines. And the rest of it, there were 6 tie counties. And for those counties, all of the ties were thrown to Hillary's. So Bernie really won the Iowa election, and they had to send the Bernie voters home in order to get a Hillary win.
So,
just like they had to put white noise machines in the audience to allow Hillary to speak at the convention.
Yes.
So the constantly speaking out, the going to YouTube, if the videos are still allowed. We had a candidate here named Andrew Yang. He turned and walked toward the stage at the place where he was going to introduce himself to Iowa. He had a pretty good audience support there for him. When he turned to the stage, he was just getting to the stage on it. It wasn't even his time to go up. He turned to the stage. They yanked the cables to the cameras.
Oh, wow.
Man, that makes me like Yang even more, I have to say.
Yeah.
So we already know which candidates are getting the heavy play. Prior to the 2018 caucus, or we had all of the candidates for the Congress and whatever coming through, and our district was able to not get the corporate candidate in. I attended all of the Democratic meetings. I am a precinct chair. We have no real Green Party or anything. So I'm trying to influence as best I can. And I could hear the candidates, even though I'm 58, I still have really good hearing. I could hear them go in the hallway and laughing about us progressives. They already had a lock on it. Well, I'm happy to say that candidate did not win. So good. I spent my time going for this kid from Dubuque, and she won. Now, she bowed down pretty quick to corporate means. But at least the really diehard one that laughed at us got kicked out. And, we have 45 candidates running for president already for the Democratic Party.
You're kidding me. Are some of them the CIA, former CIA ops that ran for Congress this past year?
And personally, I don't have anything against somebody that was former intelligence. I've had bosses that were former intelligence. I've worked in the military-industrial complex.
Okay, so on this forum, then you can say that not everybody who used to be a spook is someone that we have to be completely wary of. Is that correct?
Right. In fact, some of them I trust wholeheartedly.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I think when the World Socialist website came out with this big list of all the CIA Democrats, do you guys remember that? And that
freaked me out. Yeah.
Right. So we should be wary of that. But I have a guy that's going to come on soon. I think sometime middle of December. Christopher Burgess, and he's ex-CIA. I think. Yeah. He said, "Well, hey, don't discriminate because some of us are but they're doing good things.
Sometimes good guys join.
Right.
Is it a slight to call someone that used to be a CIA a spook?
No, it's not. No,
is that bad? Okay, that's still a term.
Not that I was one.
I just don't want to insult anyone, but I love that term.
You still are, aren't you? I know.
I am a professional basement troll.
Yes.
Nice.
I don't have anything to do with robots.
No. He's 3D printing another.
That's funny. Hey, does
a voting machine back there with it. Yeah.
Does anybody know, Julian? Do you know Progressive Independent News? I've heard of them, but I didn't think I really paid much attention. Someone was in our chat. That's let's see, Elizabeth Bergen, Netherlands, and she said, for Progressive Independent News elections, join us. We are trying to get together all of our election specialists and investigators. We can solve this problem. Our network has a worldwide reach and a page for each state. Okay. Wow. I mean, we got to have something that's nonpartisan, though. That's what's just really, really bothering me. And again,
and at the same time, it's like more people are woke and getting involved, but it's the biggest part of the attraction is getting to pick a side and fighting against the other ones, because our culture teaches us that through media and movies and TV shows and everything. All of our history is good guys and bad guys. They don't talk about how muddy those wars were. And so as a result, trying to pitch something nonpartisan, as I try myself, it is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Like, I'm constantly deleting tweets because I have people double checking on me and saying, actually, no, that just turned into a partisan issue. It's no longer nonpartisan. And I'm like, fuck, all right, fine. Dance there. Like,
well, it's the sports mentality that we cannot get out of. It's the low info voters that aren't tuned in, not paying attention. And it's just so ingrained. I mean, I think we've had a lot of, there are people, I won't name names, but, independent media people that have gone all the way over to Trump because they were so angry at what happened within the Democratic Party and the Democratic primary that they went that far, So it's hard to not, you have to kind of fight against doing that, But
something I mentioned last night on Montauk was CNN is pushing, here's the 18 candidates. There's 46 or 45.
What
and 18 the 18 that they're showing do not include the 12 who are for Medicare for all or single payer.
Of course not.
Right.
And they're just like pretending they don't even exist.
Right.
They're all just Lincoln Chaffetz. Yeah.
All the candidates that bothered to take the time to talk to us, I mean, none of them got on CNN or anywhere else. But I think that is, if I'm going to pick a side, that's the side I'm going to pick, is all of those CWAC candidates. And I guess, I don't know what's going to happen with the whole idea of adding an election integrity pledge, but I say we don't wait for anybody else. We take what Tim's doing, fighting back and insisting. I mean, Brenda Snipes should not retire with a pension. She should be fined, and we have to fight this, but we've got to get, it can't just be just Tim or just one candidate over here. And I mean, it's got to be all these people band together. Somehow we have to do that. And I think the one, Brian, don't you think we go run through your head of all people we talk to? I think almost all of them would be on board with that.
Yeah,
I don't think really any of them, I hate to be negative, but I don't think really any of them expected to win this time. They knew what they were up against. I think a lot of them hope to gain name recognition and maybe be able to win in 2020 or have a better shot in 2020. But, I mean, they did it with very little money, but they have to all be on, we have to make almost like a party, but not a party. And it has to have no money or as close to no money as possible.
We have a really good case here in the state. She's not a lawyer. She's not going to get the help like Tim Canova. most of her ballot win came from mail-in voters. And at the end of the race, and this was a good candidate, I actually door-to-door for. At the end of everything, she lost by about 9 votes. And again, it was Republican controlling the accounting. 31 of the mail-in voting, because they're almost 100% for her. 31 of the votes, ballots were thrown out. And it would have been enough for her to win.
Talk about your vote actually counting, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need more stories like that out there, too, for the apathetic that like to think that, oh, it's 10,000 people. What's the difference if I don't go? Well, you and your 10,001 other friends just screwed it for us.
Yeah. In this case, like I said, 9 difference.
If we had a candidate like network, and then we had news like this, where on that channel, everything like that's reported, or like this person's telling me, I guess, Progressive Independent News has reports on elections, but to consolidate it all in one place and have all these candidates, so, this candidate in Louisiana that had that happen with the touch machine, then they can connect with the 3 other candidates that might have had that same machine and had the same experience, and then we put something together to, I don't know, to fight that. But it's just right now, it's just so scattered and buried, and nobody knows what's going on, that's why it's allowed to continue, I guess. I don't know.
Yes.
It's a huge fight. It's definitely a huge fight. Well, I'm afraid my neck is starting to hurt, so I'm going to have to sign off. But if you guys want to still talk, I'm happy to leave it up. I think Mitch, sorry, you were. I know you were trying to come in earlier. I wanted with Pat and Krish, our celebrity guests.
There was a lot of people.
I didn't want to have more than 6 because.
Well, the thing was, you're talking about water purification.
Yeah, I know. That's your thing. Yeah.
And
I thought of you
also Attorney Angeli, I had one of the 3 on the patent for that. Used polycrystalline microdiamonds, strings of diamonds.
Nice.
Well, we'll do. I was gone to Florida for 3 weeks. I really didn't want to come back because it's it's actually 70 today, but I think we're going back down into the 30s and 40s and raining. And in Florida, it was like 80 degrees. So, I'm ready to pack up and move permanently.
But anyway, dressed warm. I'm in a near blizzard.
Oh, okay. But anyway, we weren't doing this for a couple of weeks. So maybe we'll do some extra ones, whatever, during the week. And we have some, like I've got the CIA guy that wants to come on, and then another person that does some kind of, came up with a system to count the paper ballots by machine, but supposedly, I don't know, I have to hear his whole presentation. So I might have him come on, sometime soon. He knows some of the other people that are in the election integrity movement. But I'm just looking for anybody and everybody that's got ideas and that it seems nonpartisan. That's just really important. So, but anyway, we could do some more extra shows since we've been off for a bit. It's just a lot of hours in a row now at this point. So I'm going to go lie down. But
sounds good.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for coming, and nice to see you, Mitch. It's been a while. And Julian, let me know when the other thing is, and I'll dial in. I didn't realize Signal had video. I can do that?
Oh, yeah. Sure.
I guess I didn't even notice that. Okay. All right. Sometime this week, you think?
Yes, sure.
Okay. Okay, cool. All right. Good night, everybody. And we need... Oh, hey, one other thing before I go. Yeah, the app and all that. Julian, this is Chris is who I was telling you about. Progressive Rampage.
Oh, yeah, Chris.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounded very interesting. I would love to talk to you about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. We could try to set something up. You could talk with our board. It's just, there's only 3 of us on the board, and then Josh is our spokesraptor. Birds of prey are also called raptors, so I kind of coined that because he put a dinosaur head on at one point when he was waving the flag and wearing one of our T-shirts. So he's a spokesraptor. But we could have you in just to chat with us and get to know what we're all about. We do Zoom chats all the time. So
Well, I thought
Awesome. Sounds good.
the whole point also is fighting this fight as much as possible without money.
Yeah.
And that you guys are on the same page with that, and I think that's really important. So
everything we use and create is pretty much open source. So except for the Amazon bucket, we have to put our repository in, but otherwise.
What is it with Amazon? Everybody it's like we're all stuck somehow with that shit.
It's like having to drink shitty cow's milk, right? I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah. Sometime off air, I'd like to talk to you about another alternative, because they need a more stable platform other than the PCs. And we talked before about a possibility.
Well, hang
maybe
on.
I could run